She's laughing. The words came out strangled, disbelieving. Marcus Hammond stood frozen on his third-floor balcony, champagne glass slipping from his fingers, shattering on Italian marble. Below, in the sculpted gardens of his Connecticut estate, his daughter, his silent, wheelchair-bound daughter, who hadn't made a sound in 8 months, was laughing. Uncontrollable, gasping laughter that echoed off the fountain like bells he'd forgotten existed. And dancing before her, barefoot on the perfectly manicured lawn, was a black boy in torn jeans moving like the world was his stage. The boy didn't belong there. Couldn't be there. The gates were locked. Security cameras monitored every inch. Yet there he was, wild, joyful, impossible, and Sophia was alive again. Marcus's hand reached for his phone, 911 half-dialed, when his daughter clapped. Once, twice. Her hands, motionless for months, moving. He lowered the phone. And for the first time since the accident, Marcus Hammond didn't know what to do. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Now let me take you back to where it all began. The accident happened on a Tuesday. Marcus Hammond remembered because Tuesdays were acquisition days, the day his team closed deals that reshaped industries. He'd been in a conference room in Manhattan, surrounded by lawyers and spreadsheets, restructuring a pharmaceutical company's supply chain when his phone vibrated. He'd ignored it. The second call came through his assistant. The third made his lead attorney stop mid-sentence. "Mr. Hammond, you need to take this." The voice on the other end was professional, detached, trained to deliver catastrophic news without inflection. There had been an accident on the Merritt Parkway. A semi-truck had crossed the median. His wife's Mercedes had been struck head-on. Caroline was gone before the ambulance arrived. Sophia had been extracted from the wreckage with a severed spine. The doctors spoke in measured tones about T10 complete spinal cord injuries, about rehabilitation potential and adaptive equipment. They used words like permanent and mobility limitations and psychological adjustment. Marcus heard none of it. He stood in the ICU hallway, staring at his daughter through reinforced glass, watching machines breathe for her, and felt the world he'd built with ruthless precision collapse into ash. That was 8 months ago. Now the Hammond estate stood like a monument to grief. 23 acres in Fairfield County, purchased when Sophia was 2 and Caroline had insisted their daughter needed space to run. The house itself was a masterpiece of modern architecture, glass and steel and cedar, designed by a firm that normally only worked for tech billionaires. 12,000 square feet, 7 bedrooms, a climate-controlled wine cellar, an indoor pool with therapy jets that Sophia refused to use. Marcus had hired the best, physical therapists from Johns Hopkins, occupational specialists who'd worked with Olympic athletes, a child psychologist from Yale who specialized in trauma. They came with credentials and references and treatment plans that covered every wall of his study. They lasted weeks, sometimes days. Sophia wouldn't speak, wouldn't engage, sat in her custom wheelchair staring at nothing, her small body swallowed by cushions and supports, her eyes empty of everything that had made her his daughter. The therapist called it selective mutism, a trauma response. The psychologist suggested grief counseling, art therapy, equine therapy. Marcus wrote the checks. Nothing changed. His daughter remained silent, locked somewhere he couldn't reach, and every medical professional he hired eventually admitted defeat with the same apologetic expression. Sometimes, the Yale psychologist had said on her last visit, children need time and space and something we can't give them. I can give her anything, Marcus had replied, the words coming out harder than intended. Name it. The woman had gathered her briefcase, her smile sad and knowing. That's the problem, Mr. Hammond. Some things can't be purchased. She'd left him standing in the foyer of his mansion, surrounded by wealth he'd built from nothing. And for the first time in his adult life, Marcus Hammond felt poor. He'd buried himself in work after that. 16-hour days, international calls at midnight, acquisitions and mergers and hostile takeovers that required the kind of calculated aggression that had built his empire. His executive team worried privately about burnout. His board suggested he take time. Marcus ignored them all. Because work made sense. Markets could be predicted. Competitors could be outmaneuvered. Risk could be calculated and managed. Work had rules. and Marcus had spent his entire life mastering them. His daughter's silence had no rules. The afternoon it happened, Marcus was in his study reviewing quarterly projections for his logistics division. The windows overlooked the garden, Caroline's garden, though he tried not to think of it that way. She'd spent 3 years designing it, imported roses from France, a fountain carved from Carrara marble, stone pathways that wound through beds of lavender and sage. Sophia's nurse, Patricia, had wheeled her outside for fresh air. Standard routine. 20 minutes in the garden, weather permitting, to prevent vitamin D deficiency and maintain circadian rhythms. Patricia sat on a bench reading while Sophia stared at the fountain, motionless, silent, exactly as she'd been for 247 days. Marcus glanced up from his laptop, saw them there, and returned to his spreadsheet. 3 minutes later, he heard his daughter laugh. The sound was so foreign, so impossible, that his brain initially rejected it. He'd stood up without conscious thought, moving to the window, and seen the boy. 9 years old, maybe 10. Skinny, with skin dark as coffee and hair twisted into small locks. Wearing jeans torn at both knees and a faded blue t-shirt 2 sizes too large. No shoes. Spinning in circles on the lawn, arms spread wide, head thrown back like he was trying to catch the sky. And Sophia, his silent, broken daughter, was laughing. Not a small laugh, not polite or restrained. Full-bodied, gasping laughter that shook her small frame. Her hands were gripping the wheelchair's armrests, her knuckles white, her whole body leaning forward like she was trying to join him. Patricia had jumped up, phone already in her hand, moving toward the boy with the kind of urgency reserved for threats. Marcus was already running, taking the stairs 2 at a time, his heart hammering against his ribs. By the time he reached the garden, Patricia had placed herself between Sophia and the boy, who'd stopped dancing and was watching them both with eyes too old for his face. "Security's been called," Patricia said, slightly breathless. "I don't know how he got in." Marcus stared at the boy. Up close, he could see the dirt under his fingernails, the worn fabric of his clothes. A street kid. Had to be. The estate was only 3 miles from Bridgeport, close enough that someone desperate or foolish might try to hop the fence. "What are you doing here?" Marcus demanded. The boy didn't answer immediately. He looked past Marcus to Sophia, who'd stopped laughing but was still watching him, her expression more alert than it had been in months. "She was sad," the boy said finally. His voice was quiet but steady. "I heard her crying yesterday. Through the fence." Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. "You were on my property yesterday." "Near it." The boy shifted his weight, ready to run. "I walk home from school that way. Heard crying. Looked through the fence and saw her. She looked like she needed to laugh." "So you broke into private property to—" "What? Entertain her?" "Didn't break nothing." The boy pointed toward the eastern fence line. "There's a gap." "By the old oak. Been there a while." Patricia made a note on her phone. Marcus heard sirens in the distance, security arriving, probably with local police. The boy heard them too. His shoulders tensed, but he didn't run. Instead, he looked at Sophia again. "You like the dancing?" And Sophia, his daughter who hadn't spoken in 8 months, nodded. The gesture was small, barely perceptible. But it cracked something in Marcus's chest. He raised a hand, stopping Patricia before she could speak. "What's your name?" he asked. "Isaiah." "Isaiah what?" "Just Isaiah." The security SUV pulled up to the garden's entrance. 2 men in suits emerging. Marcus held up a hand, stopping them. He looked at the boy, at Isaiah, really looked at him. Saw the intelligence in his eyes, the careful way he held himself, the absence of fear despite being surrounded by adults with power. "How old are you?" 9. "Where are your parents?" Something flickered across Isaiah's face. "Just me and my grandma. She works evenings. I got time after school." "And you spent that time breaking into my property." "Didn't break nothing," Isaiah repeated. "Just came to make the sad girl laugh." Marcus felt Patricia watching him, felt the security team waiting for instructions, felt the weight of every reasonable, rational response pressing against his chest. This was trespassing. The boy needed to be escorted off the property, the fence repaired, additional security measures implemented. But Sophia was still watching Isaiah, still alert, still present in a way she hadn't been since before the accident. "Let him go," Marcus said finally. Patricia's eyes widened. "Mr. Hammond, we should at least contact—" "Let him go!" He looked at Isaiah. "Through the front gate this time, and don't come back." Isaiah nodded slowly. He turned toward Sophia, gave a small wave. "Bye, sad girl. Maybe you're not so sad today." Then he was gone, escorted by security to the front entrance, leaving through gates that locked automatically behind him. Marcus watched until the SUV disappeared down the drive, then looked at his daughter. Sophia was staring at the spot where Isaiah had been dancing, her hands still gripping the armrests, her expression more focused than he'd seen in months. As he watched, she lifted one hand, slowly, trembling with effort, and placed it in her lap. It was the first purposeful movement she'd made since the accident. Patricia saw it too. Her hand went to her mouth. "Oh my God!" Marcus felt his throat tighten. He knelt beside Sophia's wheelchair, his hand covering hers, feeling the warmth of her skin, the slight tremor in her fingers. "Sweetheart?" His voice came out rough. "Can you hear me?" Sophia's eyes moved to his face. She didn't speak, but her fingers twitched under his palm. Once. Deliberate. It wasn't enough. It was everything. That night, Marcus stood in his study nursing a scotch he didn't taste, staring at security footage from the eastern fence line. The gap was exactly where Isaiah had said, a section where the wrought iron had pulled away from its post, creating a space just wide enough for a small body to slip through. The cameras showed Isaiah had been telling the truth. He'd approached the fence at 3:47 p.m. the previous day, stood listening for several minutes, then disappeared. Today, he'd arrived at 3:52, slipped through the gap, and danced in the garden for exactly 7 minutes before Patricia noticed him. 7 minutes. That's all it had taken to bring Sophia back from wherever she'd been. Marcus replayed the footage 3 times, watching the boy spin and leap, watching his daughter's face transform. He'd built a fortune on pattern recognition, on seeing opportunities others missed, and what he saw in this footage wasn't a threat. It was a mystery he couldn't solve with money. The next afternoon, Marcus worked from home. He told himself it was to review the security improvements. The gap had been welded shut within 2 hours. But at 3:45, he found himself standing at his study window, looking down at the garden where Patricia sat reading and Sophia sat motionless. 3:52 came and went. No Isaiah. Marcus felt an emotion he didn't want to name. Relief, maybe. The situation had been handled appropriately. The boy wouldn't return. Life would continue on its careful, controlled path. Sophia sat in her wheelchair, staring at nothing. At 4:03, the doorbell rang. Marcus heard Patricia answer it, heard a young voice at the door. He was downstairs before conscious thought kicked in, arriving to find Patricia standing in the open doorway, Isaiah on the other side. The boy had changed clothes, clean jeans, a t-shirt that actually fit. His feet were still bare. "Gate's locked," Isaiah said simply. "Thought I should come to the door proper this time." Patricia looked at Marcus, her expression carefully neutral. "Mr. Hammond?" Marcus should have said no. Should have thanked the boy for his honesty and sent him home. Should have closed the door on this entire bizarre situation. Instead, he heard himself say, "5 minutes, in the garden. Patricia stays with you." Isaiah's face split into a grin. He was through the door before Marcus could reconsider, heading straight for the garden. Marcus followed, watching from the doorway as the boy approached Sophia's wheelchair. "Hey, sad girl," Isaiah said, dropping into an exaggerated bow. "Missed you." Sophia's eyes tracked to his face. Her lips twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. "Watch this," Isaiah said, and launched into a dance that was somehow both completely graceless and utterly captivating. He flailed his arms, kicked his legs, spun in circles that made him stumble. He narrated his own movements in a theatrical voice. And now the mighty dancer attempts the legendary triple spin. Oh no, he's falling. Nope, he's got it. He didn't have it. He crashed into the fountain's edge, caught himself, kept going. Sophia laughed. The sound hit Marcus like a physical force. He gripped the doorframe, watching his daughter's face come alive, watching her hands move to her lap, watching her lean forward in the chair like she wanted to join in. Patricia was recording on her phone, tears streaming down her face. Isaiah danced for exactly 5 minutes, then stopped, breathing hard. He looked at Sophia seriously. "You're supposed to move too," he said. "That's how it works. I dance, you move, even just a little bit." Sophia stared at him. Then, slowly, so slowly Marcus held his breath, she raised one hand, opened and closed her fingers. A tiny wave. Isaiah whooped like she'd just scored a touchdown. "Yes, that's what I'm talking about. Tomorrow, we get both hands going, and maybe some head bobbing. You got head bobbing in you, sad girl?" Sophia's lips curved, almost a smile. "Time's up," Patricia said gently, though her voice was unsteady. Isaiah nodded. He gave Sophia another bow, started to leave, then turned back. "I'm Isaiah, by the way. What's your name?" Sophia's mouth opened, closed. No sound came out, but her lips formed the shape Sophia. Isaiah grinned. "Nice to meet you, Sophia. See you tomorrow." He left through the front door, giving Marcus a small nod as he passed. Marcus watched him walk down the long driveway, bare feet on expensive pavement, until he disappeared beyond the gates. Then he returned to the garden, to where Patricia was still filming, to where his daughter sat with her hands in her lap, and something like hope in her eyes. "Did you see?" Patricia whispered. "She tried to say her name. She actually tried." Marcus had seen, was still seeing it, replaying the moment, that tiny movement of lips, that enormous effort. "How long has it been since she attempted speech?" he asked. "Not since the hospital. The psychologist said not to push, that she'd speak when she was ready." Patricia lowered her phone, looked at him directly. "That boy reached her in 5 minutes, Mr. Hammond. 5 minutes." Marcus knew. He'd seen his daughter come alive twice now, both times because of a barefoot 9-year-old who danced like the world was his stage. It made no logical sense, violated every principle of trauma therapy he'd paid experts to explain. And it was working. "He can come back," Marcus said. "Same time, same conditions. Patricia supervises. 5 minutes only." "You're sure?" He wasn't. But he looked at Sophia, saw her hands moving slightly in her lap, practicing the wave she'd given Isaiah, and certainty didn't matter. 5 minutes, he repeated. Every day. That night, Marcus did something he hadn't done in 8 months. He called his sister. Rachel lived in Boston, ran a nonprofit for foster children, and had offered a dozen times to come stay with him after the accident. He'd declined every time, citing work obligations and adequate staff. The truth was, he couldn't bear to be around her, around anyone who'd known Caroline, who remembered what his family used to be. "Marcus?" Her voice carried surprise and concern. "Is everything okay? Is Sophia—" "She's fine. Better than fine." He paused, realizing how that sounded. Something happened, something strange. He told her about Isaiah, about the dancing, the laughter, the almost smile. Rachel listened without interrupting, the way she'd always been able to. And when he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "This boy," she said finally. "You don't know anything about him? His family? His situation?" "Just that he lives with his grandmother. She works evenings. And he's been walking past your property every day, heard your daughter crying, and decided to help." Rachel's tone shifted. "Marcus, that's not typical 9-year-old behavior." "I know. Have you considered that he might need help too?" The question caught him off guard. He'd been so focused on Sophia's response, on the mystery of Isaiah's effect on her, that he hadn't thought about the boy's circumstances. Street clothes, bare feet, walking home alone from school, a grandmother who worked evenings. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that children who are that attuned to other people's pain usually understand it from personal experience." Rachel's voice gentled. "I'm not saying don't let him visit. I'm saying pay attention, and maybe ask yourself why a 9-year-old is walking around unsupervised at 4 p.m. looking for sad children to entertain." After they hung up, Marcus pulled up the security footage again, watched Isaiah's approach, his dancing, his careful observation of Sophia. Rachel was right. There was nothing typical about this. The boy moved like someone used to reading situations, adjusting his behavior to match what was needed. like someone who'd learned survival young. Marcus made a note to have his head of security run a background check. Just basic information, an address, family situation, school enrollment, nothing invasive, just enough to understand who this boy was and whether his presence posed any risk. But even as he justified the decision, he knew the real reason. Isaiah had reached his daughter when everyone else had failed, and Marcus needed to understand how. The next afternoon, Isaiah arrived at 352 exactly. Marcus watched from his study as Patricia let him in, as the boy kicked off the shoes he'd worn this time and headed barefoot to the garden. As if reading Marcus's thoughts, Isaiah looked up at the window and waved. Marcus found himself waving back. The dancing that day was different. Isaiah started the same way, wild spinning, theatrical falls, but then he stopped and looked at Sophia seriously. "Today we're dancing together," he announced. "I dance up here." He moved his upper body. "You dance down there." He pointed at her hands. "Deal?" Sophia stared at him. Isaiah waited, patient, until she gave a tiny nod. "All right." Isaiah launched into movement, arms flailing, hips twisting. "Your turn." Sophia's fingers twitched, stopped. Isaiah kept dancing, kept watching her, and slowly, trembling with effort, Sophia raised both hands, moved them side to side, a tiny mirror of Isaiah's movements. "Yes!" Isaiah spun faster. "That's it! Now we're cooking!" For 5 minutes they moved together, Isaiah wild and graceless, Sophia barely perceptible, and Marcus watched his daughter work harder than she had for any therapist, any doctor, any expensive specialist he'd hired. When the time ended, Isaiah was breathing hard. He high-fived Sophia's raised hand, the smack of palm against palm echoing in the quiet garden. "Tomorrow," Isaiah said, "we're going to get those shoulders moving too. Maybe even some head bobbing. You ready?" Sophia nodded. A full nod, definite and clear. Isaiah grinned and left. That evening, Marcus's head of security delivered a thin file. Isaiah Morrison, age 9. Lived in a subsidized apartment in Bridgeport with his grandmother, Loretta Morrison. Mother deceased, drug overdose when Isaiah was 4. Father unknown. Loretta worked as an evening shift custodian at a medical complex. Isaiah attended Bridgeport Public School No. 4, where his teachers described him as bright but distracted, with excellent test scores despite inconsistent homework completion. The file included a note. Child Services has no active cases. Grandmother is legal guardian, no red flags. Marcus set the file aside, feeling vaguely guilty. He'd promised himself this was just for security purposes, but he'd read every word twice. Memorized details. Isaiah's mother had been 19 when she died. Loretta had been cleaning offices for 11 years. Isaiah's test scores placed him in the 95th percentile, despite missing an average of 1 day of school per week. A bright kid in a hard situation, doing his best. Rachel had been right. The background check also explained the bare feet. The file noted that Isaiah's grandmother's income barely covered rent and food. Shoes were probably a luxury they couldn't always afford. Marcus closed the file and stared at nothing, thinking about his daughter, being entertained by a boy whose mother had died when he was Sophia's age. About grief recognizing grief. About the kind of wisdom that came from loss too early. At dinner, he tried to tell Sophia about his day. She didn't respond, but she maintained eye contact, something she hadn't done in weeks. Progress. Incremental, but real. The days developed a rhythm. Isaiah arrived at 3:52, danced for 5 minutes, left. Each day, Sophia moved a little more. Her hands became more coordinated. Her shoulders started shifting. On day 5, she bobbed her head. Patricia recorded everything, creating a video log that showed transformation Marcus could barely believe. The physical therapists he showed it to were stunned. "This is remarkable," Dr. Chen said, watching Sophia sway to Isaiah's movements. "The engagement, the voluntary motion. Mr. Hammond, whatever this is, don't stop it." But Marcus had already noticed something else. Each day when Isaiah left, Sophia withdrew again. Not completely, she was still more present than before, but the light dimmed. She was waiting for 3:52, for Isaiah, for 5 minutes of connection that made her want to move. On day 7, Marcus made a decision. When Isaiah arrived, Marcus met him at the door instead of Patricia. The boy's expression showed surprise, but not concern. Mr. Hammond. Isaiah. Marcus gestured toward the study instead of the garden. Can we talk for a minute first? Isaiah followed him, his bare feet silent on marble floors. He looked around the study with open curiosity, taking in the floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, the mahogany desk, the view of the garden below. This is about Sophia? Isaiah asked. In a way. Marcus gestured for him to sit. Isaiah perched on the edge of a leather chair that probably cost more than Loretta's monthly rent. You've been coming here for a week now, every day at the same time. You said I could. I did. And I'm grateful. What you've done for my daughter. Marcus's voice caught. He cleared his throat. The therapists I've hired couldn't reach her, but you have, in 5-minute sessions. Isaiah waited, eyes sharp. I want to understand why, Marcus continued. What made you decide to help her? Isaiah was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer. My mama used to get sad, real sad. She'd sit and stare at nothing, just like Sophia. I learned that if I danced, if I acted silly, sometimes she'd smile. Sometimes she'd come back. The past tense wasn't lost on Marcus. Your mother passed away. When I was 4. Isaiah's expression didn't change. Grandma says she had demons. I just remember her being sad a lot. And I remember that dancing helped, sometimes. I'm sorry, Isaiah shrugged. It was a long time ago. 5 years. For a 9-year-old, that was half a lifetime. Marcus felt something shift in his understanding of this child, of what drove him to slip through fences to make strangers laugh. Your grandmother, Marcus said carefully. She knows you're coming here. She knows I take walks after school. That's not the same thing. Isaiah met his eyes. She works hard. I don't like to worry her with details. She'd worry about you visiting strangers' homes. You're not a stranger anymore. Isaiah glanced toward the garden, where Sophia would be waiting. And Sophia needs me. That makes it okay. The certainty in his voice was absolute. This 9-year-old had decided Sophia needed help and had appointed himself to provide it, consequences be damned. It was reckless and foolish and exactly what Marcus's daughter had needed. What if I offered you something more, like, Marcus asked. Isaiah's eyes narrowed slightly. Like what? More time. Instead of 5 minutes, an hour. Every day after school. You and Sophia could spend real time together, maybe help her progress faster. You want to pay me? Isaiah's voice carried an edge Marcus couldn't quite identify. To be her friend? No. Marcus realized how it sounded, tried again. I want to give you a safe place to spend your afternoons, and Sophia benefits too. It's mutually helpful. Isaiah stood up. I should go dance now. She's waiting. Isaiah, I don't need money, Mr. Hammond. The boy headed for the door, then turned back. I come because Sophia needs to laugh, that's all. When she doesn't need it anymore, I'll stop coming. He left before Marcus could respond, heading to the garden where Sophia waited. Through the window, Marcus watched their session. Isaiah dancing, Sophia moving, both of them connected by something Marcus was clearly too clumsy to understand. Patricia appeared beside him. What happened? I tried to formalize the arrangement. He shut me down. Good for him. Marcus looked at her sharply. Excuse me? Mr. Hammond, that boy doesn't come here because he needs charity. He comes because your daughter needs him. The moment you try to buy that, you ruin it. Patricia's expression was kind but firm. Let it be what it is. A child helping another child. Nothing more complicated than that. She was right. Marcus knew she was right. But watching them in the garden, seeing his daughter come alive, he felt the familiar urge to control, to structure, to ensure this valuable thing continued through sheer force of will and resources. It was the same impulse that had built his empire, and it was exactly wrong for this situation. When Isaiah's 5 minutes ended, Marcus met him at the door with an apology. I shouldn't have offered you money. Patricia's right. This isn't a transaction. Isaiah studied him. No, it's not. But I would like you to stay longer. If you want to, an hour, maybe more. Just spending time with Sophia. Marcus held up a hand before Isaiah could object. Not as an employee, as her friend, because I think she could use a friend right now. What about my grandma? She gets home at 6. I need to be there. I'll have my driver take you home. You'd be back by 5:30. Isaiah considered this. And I can just hang out? Do whatever? Whatever Sophia enjoys. Okay, Isaiah nodded. I can do that. The next afternoon, Isaiah stayed for 90 minutes. They started in the garden, the usual dancing, but then Isaiah wheeled Sophia to the library where he pulled books off shelves and acted out the covers. He did voices, made up ridiculous plot lines, got Sophia laughing so hard she nearly fell out of her wheelchair. Patricia recorded it all, tears streaming down her face. When Marcus's driver took Isaiah home, the boy waved from the car window, his grin visible even in the growing dark. That night, Sophia spoke. Just one word, barely a whisper, as Patricia helped her into bed. More. Patricia called Marcus immediately. He rushed to Sophia's room, found his daughter already asleep, but Patricia was beaming. She said, more, clear as day. I asked if she wanted more time with Isaiah tomorrow, and she said it again. More. Marcus sat on the edge of his daughter's bed, watching her sleep. Her face was peaceful, relaxed. For the first time in 8 months, she looked like a child instead of a trauma survivor. He touched her hair gently. You can have all the more you want, sweetheart. I promise. The next morning, Marcus did something he hadn't done since the accident. He cleared his schedule, told his assistant to cancel his meetings, informed his board he was taking a personal day. Then he went to find his daughter. Sophia was in the sunroom when Marcus found her, Patricia reading aloud from a picture book neither of them were really paying attention to. His daughter's eyes were fixed on the window, watching the driveway, waiting for 3:52 and the boy who made her want to speak again. Marcus cleared his throat. Both looked up, surprised. He was never home at this hour. I thought, he said, pulling a chair closer to Sophia's wheelchair, that maybe today we could all spend time together, you, me, and Isaiah, if that's okay with you. Sophia's eyes widened. She looked at Patricia, then back to Marcus and gave a small nod. Good. Marcus settled into the chair, feeling awkward and uncertain in a way boardrooms had never made him feel. Can you tell me what you and Isaiah do? When he's here? Sophia's mouth opened, closed. Her brow furrowed with concentration, and Marcus saw the effort it took, the way her whole body tensed with the attempt to push sound past whatever barrier the accident had built. Books, she whispered finally. The word was scratchy, unpracticed, but clear. Marcus felt his chest tighten. He reads to you? A head shake. Acts, funny voices. 3 more words. Patricia's hand flew to her mouth. Marcus had to swallow twice before he could respond. That sounds wonderful, sweetheart. Maybe today I can watch. Sophia considered this, then nodded again. She turned back to the window, resuming her vigil, and Marcus sat with her in silence, marveling at the fact that his daughter had just spoken 9 words, more than she'd managed in 8 months combined. When Isaiah arrived at 3:52, he found all 3 of them waiting. His expression flickered with something Marcus couldn't quite read, uncertainty maybe, or the instinct to retreat when situations shifted unexpectedly. Hey, Isaiah said, staying near the door. Is everything okay? Everything's fine, Patricia assured him. Mr. Hammond thought he'd join us today. If that's all right with you. Isaiah looked at Sophia. You cool with your dad hanging around? Sophia nodded. All right then. Isaiah kicked off his shoes. He'd started wearing them to the door, though he still danced barefoot, and headed to the garden. But I gotta warn you, Mr. Hammond, my dancing's not really meant for adult audiences. Might be too sophisticated. Despite himself, Marcus smiled. I'll try to keep up. The dancing that afternoon was spectacular. Isaiah had developed a routine of sorts, starting with wild spins to get Sophia laughing, then slowing into movements she could mirror. Today he added narration clearly meant for Marcus's benefit. And now the legendary Isaiah performs the move that made him famous across the land, the backward stumble. He walked backward, tripped over his own feet, windmilled his arms dramatically. The crowd goes wild. Sophia's dad is amazed. Patricia's already calling Hollywood. Sophia giggled, her hands moving in small circles, her shoulders swaying. She was more animated than Marcus had ever seen her, more present. When Isaiah spun too fast and actually fell into the fountain's edge, she laughed so hard no sound came out, just breathless gasping. Isaiah climbed out dripping, grinning. Okay, that wasn't planned, but we're going to pretend it was. Very advanced technique, years of training. You're soaked, Patricia said, trying not to laugh. It's cool, I'll dry. Isaiah shook like a dog, spraying water everywhere, making Sophia shriek. An actual shriek, high and bright. He looked at Marcus. See? Sophisticated. After the garden, they moved to the library. Isaiah's performance there was even more elaborate. He pulled down Where the Wild Things Are and became each monster, stomping around the library with exaggerated fierceness, making Sophia name each one. She did, her voice getting stronger with each word, until she was almost speaking at normal volume. Marcus watched from a leather chair, forgotten, witnessing a version of his daughter he'd thought lost forever. She was engaged, active, fighting past trauma to connect with this barefoot boy who treated her paralysis like an inconvenience rather than a tragedy. Your turn, Isaiah announced, thrusting the book at Marcus. Marcus blinked. What? Your turn to read. Do the voices. Isaiah flopped onto a couch. I'm tired. Perform my heart out. Now you gotta carry the show. I don't think... Dad, Sophia whispered. Please. The word hit him like a physical blow. Dad. She'd called him Dad. In 8 months of silence, she'd lost that word. And now here it was, small and hopeful and impossible to refuse. Marcus took the book, opened it to the first page, started reading in a voice that felt rusty and uncertain, nothing like the confident tone he used in boardrooms. Isaiah interrupted immediately. No, you gotta commit. Big voice, be the monster. He demonstrated, growling and snarling. Like that. But old guy version. Old guy version? Marcus raised an eyebrow. You know, distinguished, with gravitas. Isaiah said the word carefully, like he'd been practicing it. My teacher says important people have gravitas. Marcus looked at his daughter, who was watching him with an expression he recognized from when she was small, before Caroline died, before the accident. Expectation mixed with delight, waiting to see if he'd be silly for her. He cleared his throat and growled like a monster. Sophia's face split into a grin. For the next hour, Marcus read every book Isaiah pulled from the shelves, doing voices that got progressively more ridiculous. Isaiah directed like a pint-sized theater coach, critiquing his performance, demanding more emotion, bigger gestures. And Sophia laughed until tears ran down her face, until she was moving both arms in excitement, until words tumbled out unprompted. More. Do the dragon again. Not like that, Dad. Bigger. When the driver arrived at 5:15, Isaiah was sprawled on the couch, Marcus was hoarse from roaring like various creatures, and Sophia had spoken more in 2 hours than in 8 months. Isaiah sat up reluctantly. Grandma's going to wonder why I'm late. The driver will explain, Marcus said. And Isaiah? Thank you for today. The boy shrugged, suddenly shy. You did good with the voices, for a beginner. High praise. Don't let it go to your head. Isaiah waved at Sophia. Tomorrow we're doing science experiments. Gonna need baking soda and vinegar, and probably towels. After he left, Marcus sat with Sophia through dinner, listening to her talk in halting sentences about what they'd done, what Isaiah had said, what she wanted to do tomorrow. Patricia kept wiping her eyes, overwhelmed. Even Maria, the cook who'd worked for the Hammonds for 6 years, came out of the kitchen just to hear Sophia's voice. That night, Marcus called his sister again. She's talking, he said without preamble. Full sentences. Rachel, she's talking. Oh, Marcus. Rachel's voice broke. That's wonderful. How? He told her about the afternoon, about performing for his daughter, about Isaiah's coaching, about feeling foolish and liberated simultaneously, about remembering what it felt like to be a father instead of a provider. This boy, Rachel said carefully, you're getting attached. He's helping Sophia. I know, but Marcus, you need to be careful. He's not yours. And his life, it's complicated in ways you can't just fix. I'm not trying to fix anything. I'm just grateful. I know you are. Just remember he has a grandmother who loves him, a life that existed before he met Sophia. Don't let your gratitude turn into something that hurts him. After they hung up, Marcus sat in his study reviewing the day. Rachel was right to be cautious. He'd spent a career acquiring things, and there was a dangerous part of him that wanted to acquire Isaiah's presence, to ensure it through contracts and compensation. But the boy had already rejected that approach. This had to remain what it was: two children helping each other, with adults simply providing space. The science experiments the next day were exactly as chaotic as promised. Isaiah arrived with ideas gleaned from YouTube videos, and a confidence that far exceeded his actual knowledge. They made volcanoes in the garden, mixing baking soda and vinegar with food coloring until the fountain was surrounded by foaming purple and green eruptions. Sophia directed operations from her wheelchair, shouting instructions, laughing when experiments failed, cheering when they succeeded. Her voice grew stronger each hour, her movements more coordinated. She was still paralyzed, still bound to the wheelchair, but she was alive inside it in a way that transformed everything. Marcus watched from the terrace, laptop forgotten, quarterly reports abandoned. His phone buzzed with increasingly urgent messages from his office. He ignored them all. "Mr. Hammond," Isaiah called up, "we need more supplies. This is for science." Marcus went inside and returned with armfuls of supplies from the kitchen: cornstarch, dish soap, hydrogen peroxide. The experiments grew more elaborate. The garden became a disaster zone. Patricia recorded everything, narrating like a nature documentary. And here we observe the wild Isaiah in his natural habitat, covered in foam and completely unrepentant. "Science requires sacrifice," Isaiah declared, flinging himself dramatically onto the grass. Sophia clapped, her whole upper body moving now, her face flushed with joy. "Again! Do it again!" By the time the driver arrived, all three of them were covered in various substances. Isaiah's shirt was tie-dyed with food coloring. Sophia had cornstarch in her hair. Marcus had somehow gotten dish soap on his $2,000 watch. He didn't care. As Isaiah headed for the car, Sophia called out to him, "Isaiah, tomorrow?" The boy turned back, grinning. "Tomorrow we build a fort. Gonna need blankets, lots of blankets." After he left, Marcus helped Patricia wheel Sophia inside for her bath. His daughter talked the entire time, already planning tomorrow's fort, describing where it should go, what features it needed. Marcus listened, memorizing every word, hoarding them against the months of silence that still haunted him. That night he received an email from his head of security. Brief, factual: Loretta Morrison's evening shift has been reduced to 3 days a week. Budget cuts at the medical complex. "Thought you should know." Marcus stared at the message. 3 days meant reduced income. For a household already stretched thin, that could be catastrophic. He thought about Isaiah's bare feet, his 2 large shirts, the careful way he never asked for anything. His first instinct was to help, write a check, create a job, solve the problem with resources. But Rachel's warning echoed in his mind, and he remembered Isaiah's response when offered money. The boy's pride was real and deserved respect. Still, knowing didn't mean ignoring. Marcus made a note to pay attention, to watch for signs of real need, to be ready to help in ways that wouldn't wound the boy's dignity. The fort construction consumed the next 3 days. Isaiah had grand visions that exceeded engineering reality, but between the 3 of them, Marcus had given up pretending to work. They created something magnificent: blankets draped over furniture, held by elaborate pulley systems, pillows creating corridors and rooms, flashlights strung like lanterns. Sophia directed from her wheelchair, which became the fort's command center. Isaiah executed her vision with modifications based on structural necessity. Marcus tied knots and moved furniture, taking orders from a 9-year-old and an 8-year-old without a trace of the authority he wielded in boardrooms. "Tighter on that corner, Mr. Hammond," Isaiah called from inside a tunnel of sheets. "It's going to collapse on Sophia's head." "Can't have that," Marcus agreed, adjusting the blanket. From her command center, Sophia giggled. "Dad's bad at forts." "The worst," Isaiah confirmed. "But he's got enthusiasm. That counts for something." When they finally finished, the entire library had been transformed into a blanket kingdom. They sat inside, flashlights creating shadows on fabric walls, and Isaiah produced a bag of grocery store cookies he'd brought from home. "Fort christening," he announced, offering them around. "Official ceremony. Everybody takes a cookie and makes a wish." Sophia took hers carefully. "What do I wish for?" Whatever you want, but don't say it out loud or it won't come true. Isaiah bit into his cookie. That's the rule. Marcus watched them close their eyes, making wishes with the seriousness children brought to such rituals. He took his own cookie, wondering what a man who had everything could possibly wish for, and realized the answer was simple. This. More of this. His daughter laughing in a blanket fort, a barefoot boy making magic out of ordinary afternoons, and time that felt full instead of empty. They spent 2 hours in the fort that first day. Isaiah read stories by flashlight. Sophia talked about school before the accident, about friends she'd lost touch with, about missing normal things. Her voice carried grief, but also hope, the ability to remember without being destroyed by remembering. You should go back, Isaiah said. To school, once you're ready. Sophia's expression clouded. I can't. I'm different now. So? Different's not bad. My grandma says different just means you got a story nobody else has. But the wheelchair? The wheelchair's just a chair with wheels. What's the big deal? You're still you, still smart and funny and good at fort planning. Isaiah shrugged. Anybody who treats you weird about it isn't worth knowing anyway. Marcus saw his daughter absorbing this, processing the idea that her paralysis didn't erase her personhood. It was the same message therapists had tried to convey with professional distance. Coming from Isaiah, it landed different, peer to peer, survivor to survivor, truth delivered without pity. Maybe, Sophia whispered. Definitely, Isaiah corrected. But take your time. Fort's not going anywhere. When the driver came, Isaiah left reluctantly. The fort had become his kingdom too, a place where he could be simultaneously in charge and childlike, responsible and free. After he left, Sophia asked Marcus to stay with her in the fort. They sat together in blanket-filtered light, and she leaned against his shoulder in a gesture of trust he'd thought lost forever. I love him, she said simply. Isaiah, he makes everything better. Marcus's throat tightened. I know, sweetheart. Can he stay? Like, live here? With us? The question was innocent, asked with a child's logic. If something makes you happy, keep it close. But Marcus heard the complexity underneath, the yearning for family that looked different than before, but could still be whole. Isaiah has a home, he said gently, and a grandmother who loves him very much. We can't take him away from that. But we could ask, if he wanted to? That's not how it works, Sophia. Marcus chose his words carefully. Isaiah comes here because he wants to help you, because you're his friend, but he's not ours to keep. We can be grateful for the time he gives us, but we have to respect that he has his own life. Sophia was quiet, processing. Then, what if his life is hard? What if he needs help too? The question was more perceptive than Marcus had expected. His daughter had noticed something in Isaiah, some shadow she recognized because she carried her own. Then we help if we can, Marcus said, in ways that respect him, but we don't try to change his whole life without asking, okay? Okay. Sophia nestled closer. I just don't want him to go away. Neither do I, sweetheart. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Sophia's question, about Isaiah's reduced household income, about the boy who'd transformed their lives asking for nothing in return. Rachel's warnings played against his instinct to solve problems, to use resources to fix what was broken. At 2 a.m., he was still awake when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Mr. Hammond? A woman's voice, older, wary. This is Loretta Morrison, Isaiah's grandmother. Marcus sat up. Ms. Morrison, is everything all right? Is Isaiah... Isaiah's fine, asleep. A pause. I'm calling because he's been coming to your house, every day for 2 weeks now. Says he's helping your daughter. He is, more than you could know. He won't tell me much. Just that she needs a friend and he's being one. But Mr. Hammond, I need to know, is my grandson safe there? Is this appropriate? The question was fair, asked with a grandmother's protective concern. Marcus heard years of struggle in her voice, of raising a child alone in a world that wasn't always kind to boys who looked like Isaiah. Your grandson is extraordinary, Marcus said. He's helped my daughter in ways I can't adequately express. She was silent for 8 months after a car accident. Isaiah got her talking again in a week. Loretta was quiet for a moment. That sounds like him. He's always been good at finding sad people and making them smile. Got that from his mother. He mentioned her. I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you. Another pause. Mr. Hammond, I'm grateful you're letting Isaiah visit. He needs this too, I think. Needs to feel useful. But I need your word that he's safe, that nobody's taking advantage, that this isn't going to end up hurting him. You have my word. And Miss Morrison, if there's ever anything you need, anything I can do to help, we're fine. Her voice firmed. Isaiah told me you offered him money. We don't need charity. That's not what I meant. I know what you meant, and I appreciate it, but we take care of our own. I just needed to know my boy is safe, and this isn't some situation I should be worried about. It's not. I promise. All right then. Loretta's tone softened slightly. Isaiah talks about your daughter at dinner now, about the fort and the science experiments, about how she's getting stronger. It makes him happy, having someone to help. So thank you for letting him. After she hung up, Marcus sat in the dark, feeling humbled. Loretta Morrison worked custodial shifts, raised her grandson alone, navigated a world that made everything harder, and she'd called to protect him, not to ask for help, not to leverage the situation, just to ensure Isaiah was safe. Rachel had been right. Isaiah had a life, a family, a grandmother who loved him fiercely. Marcus couldn't disrupt that, couldn't try to absorb the boy into his household because it made things easier. He could only be grateful for what was freely given and respect the boundaries that protected it. The next morning, Marcus was already awake when Isaiah arrived. The boy looked surprised to see him at the door. You're up early. Couldn't sleep. Marcus stepped aside, letting Isaiah in. Your grandmother called last night. Isaiah's eyes widened. Oh, is she mad? No, concerned. She wanted to make sure you were safe here. I told her about Sophia, about helping. I know, and I told her you've been incredible. But Isaiah, I want you to know, if you ever need anything, if your situation changes, you can tell me. Not because I want to interfere, but because you've given us so much. I'd like to help if I can. Isaiah studied him seriously. My grandma wouldn't like that. I know, and I respect it, but the offer stands. As a friend, not as... Marcus searched for words. Not as someone trying to fix things, just as someone who's grateful. Okay? Isaiah kicked off his shoes. Can we still build the fort extension today? Sophia wants a library room. Absolutely. They spent the afternoon creating an elaborate addition to the fort, complete with book storage and a reading nook. Sophia supervised with increasing confidence, her voice strong, her instructions clear. She'd started physical therapy again. Her choice. Motivated by a desire to surprise Isaiah with new movements. The therapist had been stunned by her engagement, her willingness to work through pain, her determination. When asked what changed, Sophia said simply, I want to dance with Isaiah. Can't do that sitting still. Now, watching them in the fort, Marcus saw his daughter reach for a book on a low shelf. Her hand trembled with effort, her face scrunched in concentration, but she grasped it, pulled it into her lap, looked at Isaiah with triumph. Did you see? I did it. I saw. Isaiah high-fived her. That's what I'm talking about. Soon you'll be reaching the top shelves. We'll have to make the fort taller. We'll need Dad's help. Obviously, he's the muscle of this operation. Marcus felt something shift in his chest, some final piece of grief loosening its grip. His daughter was healing. Not completely. She'd never walk again. The doctors had been clear about that. But she was reclaiming herself, finding joy in motion, refusing to be defined by loss. And it had started with a barefoot boy who'd heard crying through a fence and decided to help. That evening, after Isaiah left, Marcus found himself in Caroline's old office. He hadn't entered it since the accident, couldn't bear the reminder of everything they'd lost. But tonight, he opened the door and sat at her desk, surrounded by her books and photographs, and the life they'd built together. I wish you could see her, he said to the empty room. Sophia, she's talking again, laughing. There's this boy, Isaiah. You'd love him. He's stubborn and proud and has this gift for making people feel seen. The The silence offered no response, but Marcus kept talking, telling Caroline about the fort and the science experiments and their daughter's determination, about finding himself again in the chaos of blanket kingdoms and volcanic eruptions, about learning that some problems couldn't be solved with money or power, only with presence. When he finally left the office, he felt lighter. The grief remained, but it had shifted from paralysis to memory, from something that destroyed to something that informed. He was learning to live in a world without Caroline while honoring what she'd given him: their daughter, this house, the capacity to love beyond loss. The fort stood for another week, becoming the center of their afternoons. Other children might have tired of it, but Isaiah and Sophia kept finding new possibilities. Secret passages, treasure hunts, elaborate stories that spanned days. They created a world inside those blankets where paralysis didn't matter and loss couldn't reach them, where two children from vastly different circumstances were simply friends. Marcus documented it all with a camera Patricia had suggested, creating a record of transformation. In the photos, he saw his daughter's progression, from silent and withdrawn to animated and engaged. He saw Isaiah's joy in making her smile, the way he'd positioned himself as her champion without ever pitying her. And he saw himself, appearing more frequently in the frames, no longer watching from a distance but participating, being called into their games and stories, becoming part of the magic instead of just funding it. On the fort's final day, they'd agreed it needed to come down before it became permanent. They had a ceremony. Isaiah insisted on formality. They dressed up, Sophia in her favorite dress, Isaiah in clean clothes he'd brought specifically for the occasion, Marcus in a suit that made Isaiah whistle appreciatively. "Looking sharp, Mr. Hammond. Very distinguished." "That's gravitas," Marcus said, making Sophia giggle. They dismantled the fort together, folding blankets with exaggerated care, treating each piece like a sacred artifact. Isaiah gave a speech about their adventures, making them sound epic and legendary. Sophia added her own memories, her voice carrying clearly now, no hesitation. When the last blanket came down, the library looked ordinary again, just furniture and books and empty space. But something had been built there that couldn't be dismantled: friendship, trust, the knowledge that healing was possible even when everything seemed broken. Isaiah had to leave early that day. His grandmother had an appointment. As Marcus walked him to the door, the boy turned back. "Mr. Hammond, thanks for letting me come here, for trusting me with Sophia. Thank you for giving her back to me." Isaiah shrugged, embarrassed. "I just danced. She did all the hard work." After he left, Marcus returned to find Sophia in the library, sitting in the space where the fort had been. She looked small without the blankets, vulnerable. "You okay, sweetheart?" She nodded. "It was time, but I'll miss it." "We can build another one, anytime you want." "I know." She wheeled closer to him. "Dad, I've been thinking about what you said, about Isaiah having his own life." "Yes?" "What if his life gets hard? What if his grandma loses her job, or they can't pay rent, or something bad happens?" Sophia's expression was earnest, worried. "We'd help then, right? We wouldn't just let bad things happen to them?" Marcus knelt beside her wheelchair, taking her hands. "Of course we'd help, if they needed it and wanted it. But Sophia, sometimes the best way to help is to simply be a good friend, to be there, to show up, like Isaiah does for me." "Exactly like that." She thought about this, then nodded. "Okay, I can do that. I can be a good friend." "You already are, sweetheart." That night, Marcus stood on his balcony looking out at the garden where this had all begun. 2 weeks since Isaiah first appeared, dancing like the world was his stage. 2 weeks that had transformed everything: his daughter's voice, his own presence, the very atmosphere of the house that had felt like a mausoleum. He thought about what came next, about sustainability and the future. Isaiah couldn't come forever. School would get harder, responsibilities would shift, life would intervene. But for now they had this: afternoons of laughter and forts and science experiments, a barefoot boy making magic out of ordinary moments, and a daughter reclaiming herself one word at a time. It was enough. It had to be enough. Because the alternative, trying to make it permanent, to control and structure and ensure, would destroy the very thing that made it work. Marcus understood that now. Some gifts couldn't be grasped, only received with open hands and grateful hearts. Isaiah's friendship was one of them, and standing there in the dark, listening to the fountain that had witnessed his daughter's first laugh in 8 months, Marcus made himself a promise. He would cherish what was given, respect what wasn't his to keep, and be worthy of the trust a 9-year-old boy had placed in him when he danced through locked gates to make a sad girl smile. The promise lasted exactly 3 days. On Monday morning, Marcus's assistant called with news that couldn't wait. The pharmaceutical acquisition he'd been negotiating for 6 months was falling apart. The target company's CEO was threatening to walk unless Marcus flew to Seattle for emergency talks. His board was unanimous. Go now or lose a $200 million deal. Marcus stood in his study, phone pressed to his ear, listening to his CFO explain why his physical presence was non-negotiable. Through the window, he could see the garden where Isaiah would arrive in 7 hours, where Sophia would be waiting, where they'd planned to paint today, where his daughter's laughter had become as regular as breathing. "I can't," Marcus said. Silence on the other end. Then, "I'm sorry, what?" "I can't go to Seattle, not this week." Marcus, his CFO's voice carried the patience reserved for children and irrational executives. "This is $200 million, 6 months of work. If you don't show up, they'll interpret it as disrespect and walk. You know this." "Then let them walk." "Are you serious right now?" Marcus looked at his reflection in the dark computer screen. When had he last missed a critical meeting? When had he ever prioritized anything over business? The answer was never. And his daughter had paid the price, 8 months of silence while he buried himself in acquisitions and mergers, trying to outrun grief. Completely serious, send Davidson, give him full authority to negotiate. Davidson doesn't have your credibility, they want you. Then they'll learn to work with who I send. Marcus kept his voice level. "I'm not leaving Connecticut this week. Handle it." He hung up before his CFO could argue further. His phone immediately started buzzing with texts from board members, each more urgent than the last. He silenced it and went to find his daughter. Sophia was in the sunroom with her tutor, working through math problems with a focus she hadn't shown before Isaiah. She looked up when Marcus entered, her smile immediate and bright. "Dad, are you staying again today?" "I am. Thought maybe I could help with the painting this afternoon." Her tutor, a young woman named Jennifer, who'd been hired 2 weeks ago specifically because she didn't treat Sophia like she was fragile, grinned. "Fair warning, Mr. Hammond, Isaiah has ambitious plans, something about recreating the Sistine Chapel on your garden wall." The Sistine Chapel. His words. Sophia's been researching it all morning. Marcus looked at his daughter's notebook, filled with printed images of Michelangelo's masterpiece and careful notes in Sophia's handwriting. Her determination was written in every line, every color notation, every detail she'd documented. "Well," he said, pulling up a chair, "I guess we'd better study up. Can't recreate a masterpiece without understanding it first." They spent the morning learning about Michelangelo, about the years he'd spent on his back painting the chapel ceiling, about the revolutionary techniques he'd developed. Jennifer wove art history into math lessons, calculating the chapel's dimensions, discussing perspective and proportion. Sophia absorbed it all, asking questions that showed engagement Marcus had worried he'd never see again. When Isaiah arrived at 3:52, he found them still studying. He dropped his backpack by the door and examined their research with the seriousness of a curator. "Okay, good start. But we're not actually painting the whole chapel. That's crazy. We're doing our own version. Sophia in the middle like she's the important one because she is. Then the rest of us around her, and maybe some dragons." "Dragons weren't in the Sistine Chapel," Jennifer pointed out, "which is why Michelangelo needed our help." Clear oversight on his part. Isaiah pulled out supplies he'd brought, cheap watercolors and brushes from the dollar store. "I brought these, but if you got better stuff, Mr. Hammond, now's the time." Marcus retrieved the art supplies he'd ordered last week. Professional acrylics, canvas boards, brushes in every size. Isaiah's eyes went wide. "Whoa. Okay, we're doing this for real then." They set up in the garden, covering the stone wall with canvas sheets. Isaiah assigned roles with the confidence of someone who'd never doubted his authority to do so. Sophia directed the composition from her wheelchair, Jennifer mixed colors, Marcus prepared surfaces, and Isaiah painted with wild enthusiasm and zero technique. "It doesn't have to be perfect," he announced, making broad strokes that were more energy than accuracy. "It has to have feeling, right, Sophia?" "Right. More blue there." "No, more." "Perfect." They painted for 3 hours, covering canvas with images that bore no resemblance to the Sistine Chapel, but captured something equally important: joy, connection, the freedom to create without judgment. Isaiah painted Sophia with wings, declaring her an angel. She directed him to paint Isaiah as a superhero, complete with cape. Marcus ended up as a dragon, which everyone agreed was fitting. "Because you're protective," Sophia explained, "and kind of scary when you want to be, but good scary." "I'm honored," Marcus said, watching Isaiah add flames to the dragon's mouth with abandoned glee. As the sun began to set, they stepped back to examine their work. The mural was chaotic and beautiful, a collision of colors and figures that somehow held together. In the center, Sophia sat in her wheelchair with wings spreading behind her, surrounded by characters and creatures that represented their strange little family. "It's perfect," Jennifer whispered, taking photos. "It's us," Sophia said simply. Isaiah high-fived her, leaving paint on her palm. "Next time we're painting the garage. Maybe the house if your dad's feeling brave." "Let's master one wall first," Marcus suggested, but he was smiling. When the driver came for Isaiah, the boy lingered at the door longer than usual. He looked back at the mural, at Sophia still examining it in her wheelchair, at Marcus standing with paint-stained hands. "This was a good day," Isaiah said quietly. "The best," Marcus agreed. After he left, Sophia asked to stay outside with the mural. Marcus sat with her in the gathering dark, both of them studying what they'd created. His phone buzzed constantly in his pocket, the Seattle deal imploding in real time, his board increasingly panicked. He ignored it all. "I'm glad you stayed," Sophia said, "instead of going to work." "Me too, sweetheart." "Would you have before?" The question was gentle but pointed. Before the accident. Before Caroline's death. Before everything changed. Would he have stayed for an afternoon of painting with his daughter? "No," Marcus admitted. "I wouldn't have. I would have thought work was more important." "And now?" He looked at her, really looked at her, seeing the strength she'd rebuilt, the confidence Isaiah had helped restore, the person she was becoming despite everything trying to break her. "Now I know better." That night his board called an emergency meeting. Marcus joined by video, watching 12 faces arrange themselves in various expressions of concern and frustration. His CFO spoke first. "The Seattle deal is dead. They've accepted another offer. We're out $200 million in 6 months of work." He paused. "Because you wouldn't get on a plane." "I understand." "Do you?" "Marcus, we respect what you're going through with your daughter, but this company has obligations, shareholders, employees. I can't just prioritize my daughter?" Marcus kept his voice level. "The child who lost her mother and her ability to walk? Who was silent for 8 months until 3 weeks ago? That's what you're saying?" The board members shifted uncomfortably. His CFO softened slightly. "We're not saying Sophia isn't important. We're saying you have responsibilities here too. And lately you've been absent, distracted. Not the Marcus Hammond who built this company." "You're right, I'm not that Marcus Hammond anymore." He looked at each face on the screen. That Marcus Hammond missed his daughter's childhood for board meetings, missed his wife's last months because he was chasing acquisitions, and when they both needed him most, he wasn't there. "Marcus, I'm done being that person. This company will survive without me micromanaging every deal. My daughter won't." He straightened in his chair. "I'm taking a leave of absence. 3 months, minimum. Davidson gets full authority as acting CEO. If the board has issues with that, I'll consider my position." Silence. Then one of the older board members, a woman who'd known Marcus since he founded the company, spoke. "Is this about the boy? The one visiting your daughter?" Marcus hadn't realized they knew about Isaiah, but of course they did. His security team reported to the board. Nothing happened in his life that wasn't documented, analyzed, risk-assessed. "This is about my daughter getting her life back. Isaiah's part of that, yes." We've reviewed his background. The grandmother's employment situation is unstable. The boy's home life is none of our business, Marcus interrupted, unless you're about to suggest something inappropriate. We're suggesting you be careful, getting attached to situations you can't control, making promises you can't keep. It's not fair to anyone involved. I haven't made any promises except to be present for my daughter. If that's a problem, I'll resign entirely. The call ended shortly after, the board agreeing to discuss his leave request. Marcus knew they'd approve it. He still held majority shares, still had the power to do as he pleased. But the warning about Isaiah lingered, mixing uncomfortably with his own concerns. What happened when Isaiah couldn't come anymore? When school demands increased or his grandmother's situation changed, or the boy simply outgrew his role as Sophia's emotional support? What happened to his daughter when the person who'd brought her back to life moved on? He didn't have answers, could only hope that by the time those questions became urgent, Sophia would be strong enough to face them. The next morning brought unexpected complications. Marcus was reviewing emails when Patricia appeared, her expression troubled. "Mr. Hammond, there's someone here to see you. Says it's about Isaiah." Marcus's chest tightened. His grandmother? No, a woman from Child Protective Services. The woman waiting in the foyer was young, probably late 20s, with careful eyes and a clipboard that suggested official business. She introduced herself as Amanda Chen, caseworker, and asked if they could speak privately. In his study, she got straight to the point. "Mr. Hammond, we received a report about a minor child visiting your home regularly, Isaiah Morrison, age 9. The report expressed concerns about the nature of this relationship. Who filed the report?" "I can't disclose that, but I need to understand the situation. How did you meet Isaiah? Why is he spending time here?" Marcus explained. The fence, the dancing, Sophia's transformation. Amanda took notes, her expression neutral, and when he finished, she was quiet for a moment. "And you've had background checks done? On Isaiah and his grandmother?" "For security purposes, yes. Everything came back clear." "I've reviewed the file. Loretta Morrison is a good guardian by all accounts. Works hard, keeps Isaiah fed and sheltered, no red flags." Amanda looked at him directly. "But Mr. Hammond, I have to ask, what's your endgame here? A wealthy white man developing a close relationship with a poor black child from the inner city. It raises questions." Marcus felt anger flash through him. "The endgame is my daughter learning to live again, that's all." "Is it? Because from the outside, this looks like potential exploitation, or grooming, or a setup for a custody challenge." "None of those things are happening." "I believe you, but perception matters, and right now the perception is concerning enough that someone filed a report." Amanda's expression softened slightly. "Look, I'm not here to break up a friendship. If Isaiah is benefiting from this arrangement and so is your daughter, that's wonderful. But you need to be more careful, more transparent. Have you met with Loretta Morrison in person?" "No, she called once to make sure Isaiah was safe." "Then start there. Meet with her. Establish clear boundaries and expectations. Make sure she understands what's happening and has full agency in the decision. Because right now, this looks like you're operating in a gray area that could hurt everyone involved." After Amanda left, promising to follow up in 2 weeks, Marcus sat in his study feeling shaken. Someone had filed a report. Someone had looked at Isaiah's visits and seen something sinister instead of healing. And Amanda was right. The optics were complicated in ways he'd been too focused on Sophia to fully consider. He called Loretta that afternoon. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice wary. "Mr. Hammond?" "Ms. Morrison, I apologize for calling unannounced, but we need to talk, in person if possible, about Isaiah and the arrangement we have." "Did something happen? Is he in trouble?" "No, nothing like that. But Child Protective Services visited me today. Someone filed a report expressing concerns about Isaiah's visits. I think we need to get ahead of this before it becomes a problem." Loretta was silent for a long moment. "When?" "Whenever works for you. I can come to you, or you're welcome here." "I'll come there, after my shift tomorrow, around 11 p.m. "That's late." "It's when I'm free, Mr. Hammond. Take it or leave it." He took it. When Isaiah arrived the next afternoon, Marcus could see the boy knew something was wrong. His movements were more cautious, his smile less certain. "Everything okay?" Isaiah asked. Everything's fine. Just some adult complications. Nothing for you to worry about. But Isaiah was too perceptive to believe that. He looked at Sophia, who was waiting in the garden, then back at Marcus. If I'm causing problems, I can stop coming. No. Marcus's response was immediate, firm. You're not causing problems. Adults are being complicated, which is what adults do. You keep being exactly who you are. Isaiah studied him for a moment longer, then nodded and headed to the garden. Marcus watched him go. Watched Sophia's face light up. Watched them fall into their familiar rhythm of laughter and creativity. Whatever complications adults created, these two children had something pure. Friendship that asked for nothing but presence. He couldn't let bureaucracy or perception or other people's fears destroy that. That night, Marcus waited in his study until headlights swept up the drive at 11:07 p.m. Loretta Morrison emerged from a bus stop at the end of his driveway. She'd taken public transportation, he realized, probably 2 or 3 connections to get here from Bridgeport. She was smaller than he'd expected, maybe 5'3", with graying hair pulled back in a neat bun and the kind of posture that came from years of physical labor. Her face was lined but strong, her eyes sharp and assessing as she took in the mansion's exterior. Marcus met her at the door. Miss Morrison, thank you for coming. Loretta's fine. She stepped inside, looking around with the careful attention of someone trained to notice details. This is where Isaiah's been spending his afternoons. Yes, would you like a tour to see where they spend time? She nodded. Marcus showed her the library, the garden, the sunroom, all the spaces Isaiah and Sophia had claimed. Loretta took it all in silently, occasionally touching a surface or examining a corner, and Marcus realized she was doing her own assessment, making sure her grandson was safe, that the environment was appropriate, that her trust hadn't been misplaced. When they returned to the study, Marcus offered coffee. Loretta accepted, and they sat across from each other, the grandfather clock marking time in steady beats. Tell me about the CPS visit, Loretta said. Marcus explained Amanda Chen's concerns, the anonymous report, the questions about exploitation and boundaries. Loretta listened without interrupting, her expression growing harder. Someone thinks you're grooming my grandson. Apparently. And are you? The question was blunt, delivered with the force of someone who'd learned not to trust easy answers. Marcus met her eyes. No, I'm grateful for what Isaiah's done for my daughter. That's all. Gratitude from wealthy people usually comes with strings. Not this time. Loretta sipped her coffee, studying him over the rim. Isaiah talks about Sophia every night at dinner, about the fort they built, the paintings they made, the books they read. He's happy here in a way he's not often happy. You understand why that worries me? Because happiness can be taken away. Because happiness can be used against him. Loretta set down her cup. Mr. Hammond, my grandson has had a hard life. Lost his mother young, watched her struggle with demons she couldn't beat. He learned early that the world isn't kind to boys who look like him, who come from where we come from. And he learned to protect himself by not wanting things too much. He wants to help Sophia. He wants to fix sad people because he couldn't fix his mother. That's different than wanting something for himself. Loretta's voice softened slightly. But this, your daughter, this house, these afternoons, he wants this. Which means when it ends, it'll hurt him. Marcus felt the truth of that settle in his chest. What if it doesn't have to end? Everything ends, Mr. Hammond. People move on. Situations change. Rich girls get better and don't need poor boys to entertain them anymore. Sophia's not like that. She's 8. She doesn't know what she's like yet. Loretta stood, moving to the window that overlooked the garden. I'm not trying to be harsh. I'm trying to protect my grandson from getting his heart broken by a world that's already broken it once. Then let me ask you something. Marcus joined her at the window. If you could see Isaiah happy every day, see him using his gifts to help someone, see him valued and appreciated, would you take that away just because it might hurt later? Or would you trust him to handle whatever comes? Loretta was quiet for a long time. What are you really asking me, Mr. Hammond? I'm asking for your blessing to continue what we've been doing, with full transparency. You're welcome here anytime. You can set whatever boundaries you need, but please don't stop Isaiah from coming because adults are afraid of complications. And when those complications become real, when CPS decides this arrangement is inappropriate, or when your board pressures you to step back, or when Sophia doesn't need him anymore, then we handle it together, as adults who care about these children. But we don't end something good because we're afraid of something bad. Loretta turned to face him. You really love your daughter. More than anything. And you're grateful to Isaiah for bringing her back. Beyond grateful. But gratitude isn't love, Mr. Hammond, and my grandson doesn't need another person in his life who values what he can do more than who he is. The words hit like a physical blow. Marcus started to protest, then stopped, really hearing what Loretta was saying. Did he love Isaiah? Or did he love what Isaiah did for Sophia? Would he still want the boy around if he stopped making his daughter laugh? The honest answer unsettled him. I don't know Isaiah well enough to say I love him, Marcus said carefully. But I respect him, I admire him, and I want to know him better, not because of what he does for Sophia, but because he's an extraordinary person. Pretty words. True words. Test me if you don't believe them. Loretta considered this. All right, here's my condition. Isaiah keeps coming, but you start treating him like a person, not a miracle worker. That means asking about his life, his school, his interests, not just using him to fix your daughter. Agreed. And you meet with me monthly, in person. We talk about how things are going, any concerns, any changes. Full transparency, like you said. Absolutely. And if CPS comes back, if this gets complicated, you don't throw Isaiah under the bus to protect yourself. We face it together. You have my word. Loretta extended her hand. Marcus shook it, feeling the strength in her grip, the calluses from years of hard work. This was a woman who'd survived everything life threw at her and raised a remarkable child in the process. She deserved respect, partnership, honesty. One more thing, Loretta said as she headed for the door. Isaiah doesn't know I came here tonight. He'd be embarrassed, probably defensive, so we keep this between us. Of course. And Mr. Hammond, thank you for caring about my grandson. Just make sure you keep caring when it's not convenient anymore. After she left, Marcus stood in his driveway watching her walk back to the bus stop, refusing his offer of a ride. Independent to the core, protecting her dignity even when it meant a long journey home after a longer work shift. He understood now why Isaiah was the way he was. The boy had learned from the best. The next afternoon, Marcus made good on his promise to Loretta. When Isaiah arrived, instead of immediately heading to the garden, Marcus asked him to stay for a moment. How's school going? Isaiah looked surprised. School's fine. Why? Just curious. What are you studying? The usual stuff. Math, reading, science. We're doing a unit on ecosystems. Do you like it? Isaiah shrugged. It's okay. Teacher's boring, but the subject's cool. There's this whole thing about food chains and energy transfer. Pretty interesting. Are you working on any projects? We're supposed to build a model ecosystem, due next week. Isaiah shifted uncomfortably. Did I do something wrong? You're being weird. Not wrong. I just realized I've been so focused on you and Sophia that I haven't asked about your life. That wasn't fair. Isaiah relaxed slightly. Oh. Well, my life's pretty boring compared to mansion gardens and art projects. I doubt that. Tell me about this ecosystem project. They spent 20 minutes talking about Isaiah's school, his teachers, the model he wanted to build but didn't have materials for. Marcus listened, really listened, and realized Loretta had been right. He'd been treating Isaiah as a solution to Sophia's problems rather than a whole person with his own interests and struggles. What if we built your ecosystem here, Marcus suggested. We've got materials, space, and Sophia could help. Make it a joint project. Isaiah's face lit up. Really, that would be awesome. I want to do a tidal pool ecosystem with real water and everything. Then let's do it. They spent the afternoon researching tidal pools, ordering supplies online, planning the construction. Sophia threw herself into the project with enthusiasm, happy to be helping Isaiah instead of always being helped. And Marcus watched the dynamic shift, becoming more balanced, more mutual. Over the next week, they built an elaborate tidal pool ecosystem in a glass tank, complete with pumps for wave action and carefully selected organisms. Isaiah explained the food chain, the energy transfer, the delicate balance of the ecosystem. His knowledge was impressive, his enthusiasm infectious. When he presented it at school, his teacher gave him an A+ and asked if she could keep it for classroom demonstrations. Isaiah came back to the mansion glowing with pride, wanting to show Sophia and Marcus the grade. She said it was the best ecosystem model she'd seen in 15 years of teaching, Isaiah announced, because it actually works. The tide goes in and out and everything. That's incredible, Sophia said. We should build more different ecosystems, a whole collection. And they did. Over the following weeks, they constructed rainforest terrariums, desert environments, miniature wetlands. Each project taught them something new, each one balanced between Isaiah's knowledge and Sophia's organizational skills and Marcus's resources. The dynamic had shifted fundamentally. This wasn't about fixing Sophia anymore. It was about three people learning together, creating together, supporting each other's growth. Loretta noticed it when she came for their first monthly meeting. Marcus showed her photos of the ecosystem projects, told her about Isaiah's grades improving, about his increased confidence. He's flourishing, Loretta admitted. Teachers are commenting on it. Says he's more engaged, more willing to participate. He's brilliant. The teachers should have been seeing that all along. They see what they expect to see. A poor black kid from Bridgeport. Loretta's voice carried old frustration. But you're seeing him different. That matters. Marcus had been thinking about that, about how Isaiah was perceived, about the barriers he'd face, about the potential being wasted because of circumstances beyond his control. An idea had been forming, one he wanted to run past Loretta before mentioning to Isaiah. What if Isaiah attended private school? Marcus asked. There's an excellent academy 20 minutes from here, strong science program, small classes, individualized attention. I could arrange admission and cover tuition. Loretta's expression closed immediately. There it is. What? The strings, the charity, the thing I was waiting for. She stood to leave. We're fine with public school, Mr. Hammond. Wait, please. This isn't charity. It's investment in a brilliant kid who deserves better resources than he's getting. It's you deciding what my grandson deserves without asking what we want. You're right. Marcus held up his hands. You're absolutely right. I should have asked first. Would you even consider it? The academy, I mean? Loretta sat back down slowly. Why? What's in it for you? Watching Isaiah reach his potential, that's all. That's never all, Mr. Hammond. There's always something else. Marcus thought about that, about his motivations, about what he really wanted from this relationship. The honest answer was complicated. Gratitude for Sophia's healing, yes, but also affection for Isaiah himself, and something else. A desire to right wrongs, to use his privilege for good, to matter in ways that transcended quarterly profits. I want to help, he said finally. Because I can. Because Isaiah deserves it. And because walking away when I could make a difference would make me complicit in a system that's already failed him. Pretty speech, but true. Look, you don't have to decide now. Visit the academy, talk to the teachers, see if it's even something Isaiah would want. No pressure, no strings, just an option. Loretta studied him for a long moment. I'll think about it. That's all I'm promising. That's all I'm asking. But as she left that night, Marcus saw something in her expression that hadn't been there before. Consideration, maybe even hope. The possibility that her grandson could have more than survival, that he could have opportunity. It was a start. The crisis came on a Thursday in early November, 6 weeks after Loretta had promised to think about the academy. Marcus was in a video conference with his Tokyo office when Patricia burst into his study, her face pale and tight with fear. He muted immediately. It's Isaiah. He's not here. It's 4:30, and he hasn't come. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Isaiah had never been late, not once in 2 months. The boy operated on internal clockwork, appearing at 3:52 with the reliability of sunrise. Did you call his grandmother? Straight to voicemail. I tried the school. They said he left at normal dismissal. Mr. Hammond, something's wrong. Marcus was already standing, already moving. He called his head of security while striding to the garage. I need you to trace Isaiah Morrison's usual route from Bridgeport Public School number 4 to my estate. Now, check traffic cameras, everything. Sophia met him in the hallway, her wheelchair blocking his path. Her face was stricken. Where's Isaiah? He never misses. Something happened. I'm going to find him, sweetheart. Patricia will stay with you. No, I'm coming. Sophia, he's my friend. I'm coming. There was steel in her voice, the same determination she'd shown in physical therapy, in her fight to reclaim movement. Marcus looked at Patricia, who nodded, and moved to help Sophia into the accessible van they'd purchased last month. Within minutes, they were heading toward Bridgeport, Marcus driving while his security chief fed him information through the car's speakers. Traffic cameras show him leaving school at 2:47, heading east on foot. He's alone. Last visual is at 311 on Park Avenue near the old textile factory. The textile factory. Marcus knew the area, abandoned buildings, high crime, not a place a 9-year-old should be walking alone. His hands tightened on the wheel. That's 20 minutes from my estate. Why would he be there? Unknown. But, Mr. Hammond, there's something else. We pulled up a police report from this morning. Loretta Morrison was admitted to Bridgeport Hospital at 6 a.m. Workplace injury. She's in surgery. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. Isaiah had gone to school not knowing his grandmother was hurt, had probably gotten a call or message during the day, was trying to get to the hospital on foot because he had no other way. Get me the hospital address, Marcus said, already changing direction. They found Isaiah sitting on a bench outside Bridgeport Hospital's emergency entrance, still in his school clothes, his backpack beside him. His face was streaked with tears he'd tried to wipe away, his small body hunched against the November cold. When he saw Marcus's van pull up, his expression cycled through relief, shame, and defiance in rapid succession. Marcus was out of the car before it fully stopped. Isaiah, are you hurt? The boy shook his head. My grandma, they won't let me see her. Say I'm too young and I need an adult and she's still in surgery and… His voice broke. I walked from school, took forever. And now they won't even tell me if she's okay. Sophia had maneuvered her wheelchair to the van's lift, was descending before Patricia could stop her. She wheeled directly to Isaiah, grabbed his hand. We're here now. Mr. Hammond will fix it. Isaiah looked at Marcus with eyes that held too much fear for a 9-year-old. Can you fix it? Marcus knelt in front of him. I can try. Tell me what happened. She fell at work. From a ladder. They said something about her back and surgery, and they won't tell me anything because I'm just a kid. Isaiah's hands were shaking. She's all I got, Mr. Hammond. If something happens to her, nothing's going to happen to her. Let me talk to the doctors. Inside, Marcus used every ounce of authority he'd honed in boardrooms. Within 10 minutes, he'd spoken to Loretta's surgeon, reviewed her charts, and gotten permission for Isaiah to wait in a private consultation room instead of the crowded ER. The news was serious, but not catastrophic. Loretta had fallen 12 feet from a ladder while changing light fixtures. She'd compressed 2 vertebrae in her lower back. The surgery was to stabilize the fractures and prevent nerve damage. Recovery would be long, months of physical therapy, restricted mobility, no work for at least 12 weeks. Marcus returned to find Isaiah and Sophia in the consultation room, sitting close, her hand still gripping his. Patricia had gotten them both hot chocolate from the cafeteria. Isaiah looked up when Marcus entered, his whole body tense with dread. She's going to be okay, Marcus said immediately. The surgery went well. She's in recovery now. You can see her in about an hour. Isaiah's face crumpled. The tears he'd been holding back since this morning finally broke through, and he cried with the kind of devastation that came from carrying too much fear alone for too long. Sophia pulled him into an awkward hug from her wheelchair, murmuring reassurances, and Marcus felt his own throat tighten. This child had walked for nearly 2 hours trying to get to his grandmother, had been turned away by hospital bureaucracy, had sat alone on a cold bench with nowhere else to go. The injustice of it burned in Marcus's chest. When Isaiah's tears finally subsided, Marcus pulled a chair close. The doctor said your grandmother will need help for a while. At least 3 months of recovery. Do you have other family who can stay with you? Isaiah shook his head. Just us. Grandma's sister lives in Florida, but they don't talk. Nobody else. Then here's what we're going to do. You and your grandmother will stay at my house during her recovery. We have first-floor guest rooms, medical equipment, round-the-clock care if she needs it. You won't have to worry about rent or bills or how to manage. You'll just focus on school and helping her heal. Isaiah stared at him. We can't afford. This isn't about money. This is about making sure you're both safe and taken care of. No strings, no debt. Just help when you need it. That's charity. Grandma won't. It's practical. Your grandmother can't climb stairs right now, can't take care of herself, much less you. She needs medical care and you need stability. This solves both problems. Marcus gentled his voice. Let me help, Isaiah. Please. I need to ask her first. She decides. Of course. We'll ask her together as soon as she wakes up. They waited another 90 minutes before a nurse came to say Loretta was conscious and asking for her grandson. Isaiah practically ran to her room, Marcus and Sophia following at a distance. Loretta looked small in the hospital bed, diminished by pain medication and the bulk of bandages around her torso. But her eyes were clear when she saw Isaiah, and she managed a smile as he carefully climbed onto the bed beside her. Hey, baby, I'm okay. Don't cry. You fell. From a ladder. They said you broke your back. Compressed some vertebrae. I've had worse. She stroked his hair with the one arm not connected to an IV. How'd you get here? Walked. Then Mr. Hammond came and found me and talked to the doctors, and Isaiah looked back at Marcus. He wants us to stay at his house while you recover. Says you need help and I need stability, and it's practical, not charity. Loretta's eyes moved to Marcus, standing in the doorway with Sophia. Her expression was unreadable. Can we talk? Privately? Marcus nodded. Isaiah, take Sophia to the cafeteria. Get something to eat. You haven't had dinner. After they left, Marcus pulled a chair to Loretta's bedside. She studied him for a long moment before speaking. This is a lot. I know. I can't pay you back, not anytime soon. Maybe not ever. I'm not asking you to. Loretta, you've been taking care of everything alone for years. Let someone help for once. Why? Give me one good reason why a man like you wants to take in a woman like me and my grandson. And don't tell me it's because Isaiah helped Sophia. That doesn't explain this. Marcus considered his answer carefully. Because 2 months ago, your grandson heard my daughter crying and decided to help, even though it meant breaking rules and risking consequences. He didn't ask what was in it for him. He just saw someone who needed help and gave it. Maybe I learned something from that. Loretta's eyes filled. You're making it hard to say no. Then don't say no. Say yes, and let us take care of you the way you've been taking care of Isaiah all these years. You've earned the rest. For how long? Until I can work again? However long you need. If that's 3 months or 6 months or longer, no timeline, no pressure. And what happens to Isaiah while I'm laid up? He can't miss school to take care of me. He won't. He'll go to school, come home to the estate, do homework, spend time with Sophia. Patricia can help with whatever you need during the day. We've got nurses on call if medical care is required. You'll have everything you need to heal properly. Loretta closed her eyes. When she opened them again, they were wet but resolved. One condition, I work for this. I don't just take charity. Once I can move around, I contribute somehow. Cooking, organizing, something. I pay my way. Agreed. Though you should focus on healing first. And if CPS comes back around asking questions about why Isaiah's living in your mansion, we tell them the truth. His grandmother is recovering from a workplace injury and I'm providing temporary housing. Nothing inappropriate, nothing hidden. They'll make it complicated anyway, they always do. Then we handle it together, like you said we would. Loretta reached for his hand, her grip weak but intentional. You're a good man, Marcus Hammond. I wasn't sure before, but I am now. I'm just trying to do the right thing. That's what makes you good. They moved Loretta to the estate 3 days later, after her doctors cleared her for discharge. Marcus had converted a first-floor study into a bedroom, installed hospital-grade equipment, and hired a physical therapist who specialized in spinal injuries. Loretta protested every expense, but her body's limitations overruled her pride. Isaiah moved into a guest room down the hall from his grandmother, close enough to check on her but with space of his own. Marcus watched the boy explore his new room, larger than his entire apartment in Bridgeport, with a mixture of wonder and uncertainty. This is temporary, Isaiah said, as if reminding himself. Just until Grandma heals. However long that takes, Marcus confirmed. Your grandmother's room is yours too. Make yourself at home. But settling in proved harder than Marcus expected. Isaiah was used to taking care of himself, used to silence and solitude, used to a world where resources were scarce and needs went unmet. The abundance of the estate overwhelmed him. He refused new clothes, rationed food like it might run out, kept his belongings in his backpack ready to leave at a moment's notice. Sophia noticed first, he won't use the art supplies in his room, says they're too expensive to waste. And he only takes one cookie at snack time, even though Patricia says he can have more. Marcus found Isaiah in his room that evening, doing homework on the floor instead of the desk, his backpack within arm's reach. Isaiah, can we talk? The boy looked up warily. Did I do something wrong? No, but I want you to understand something. This is your home now. For as long as you're here, you don't have to ration or save or worry about using too much. The art supplies are for using. The food is for eating. The furniture is for your comfort. But it costs money. Your money. Money I have plenty of. Isaiah, your grandmother is here recovering from a serious injury. You're here so you can focus on being 9 years old instead of worrying about adult problems. Let yourself be a kid. Isaiah's jaw tightened. I've never been just a kid. Don't know how to start now. The admission broke Marcus's heart. He sat on the floor beside Isaiah, close but not crowding. Then we'll figure it out together. You, me, Sophia, deal? Isaiah considered this. Grandma says not to get comfortable. Says this is temporary and I shouldn't forget where I come from. Your grandmother is protecting you. That's her job. But she's also healing, and part of healing means accepting help. You can do both. Remember where you come from and accept where you are now. What if I like it here too much? What if I don't want to leave when it's time? There it was, the fear Loretta had named months ago. That happiness could be taken away, that wanting something made you vulnerable. Then we deal with that when it happens, Marcus said. But Isaiah, pushing away good things because you're afraid of losing them means you never get to enjoy them at all. Is that really how you want to live? Isaiah was quiet for a long time. Then, slowly, he unpacked his backpack, put his clothes in the dresser, placed his few belongings around the room. It was a small gesture, but it meant everything. Over the next weeks, the household found its rhythm. Loretta worked with her physical therapist, making slow progress. Isaiah attended school, carpooling with a neighbor's kids Marcus had arranged to drive him. Afternoons were spent with Sophia, sometimes doing homework together, sometimes building new ecosystem projects, sometimes just being kids in the way neither had really been allowed to be before. Sophia's physical therapy had progressed remarkably. She could sit upright without support for extended periods, could transfer from wheelchair to bed with minimal help, had regained significant upper body strength. Her therapist credited the motivation of having a peer around, someone who made movement feel purposeful rather than clinical. Watch this, Sophia said one afternoon, Isaiah and Marcus both present. She gripped her wheelchair's arms and pushed herself up slightly, holding the position for 3 full seconds before settling back. Dr. Chen says if I keep working, I might be able to stand with supports. Actually stand. Isaiah whooped and hugged her. That's amazing! You're going to be standing and dancing before you know it. I'll never dance like you, Sophia said, but she was grinning. Nobody dances like me. That's what makes me special. Isaiah struck a ridiculous pose. But you'll have your own style. The sitting down but sometimes standing up dance. Very avant-garde. Marcus watched them laugh together, watched his daughter's confidence bloom, watched Isaiah slowly learning to accept abundance without guilt. This strange little family they'd become felt right in ways that defied logic or explanation. At their monthly meeting, Loretta acknowledged the change. He's different here. Lighter. Like he doesn't have to carry the world on his shoulders anymore. That's because he doesn't. You both deserve rest. Rest I'm getting plenty of. Too much, honestly. I'm going stir-crazy in that bed. Loretta shifted uncomfortably, wincing at the movement. Doctor says another month before I can move without the brace. After that, light duty for weeks. No lifting, no prolonged standing. I called my supervisor. They can't hold my position that long. I'm officially unemployed. Marcus had been expecting this. What if you worked here? Light duties? Nothing that risks your recovery. Administrative work, maybe. helping Patricia with household management. You'd have income and health insurance and flexibility for therapy. That's charity with extra steps. That's employment. We need help. The estate runs on organization, and you're good at that. I've seen how you manage Isaiah's schedule, his schoolwork, his life. Those are transferable skills. Loretta looked skeptical. What's the real reason? The real reason is I want you to stay, both of you. Not as guests or charity cases, but as part of this household. Sophia needs Isaiah. Isaiah needs stability. You need time to heal without financial stress. This solves everything. For how long? Until Sophia doesn't need Isaiah anymore. For as long as you want to stay. We can formalize it. Employment contract, benefits, clear expectations, or you can take time to decide. But Loretta, you don't have to fight alone anymore. Let us be your backup. She didn't answer immediately. Marcus could see her wrestling with pride and practicality, with the instinct to refuse help and the reality of her situation. Finally, she nodded. Temporary employment, 6 months. After that, we reassess. And I want a real contract, not a handshake deal. Something legal that protects both of us. Done. I'll have my attorney draft it this week. And Isaiah goes to that academy you mentioned, if they'll take him. Marcus felt hope surge. You're sure? I'm sure he deserves better than Bridgeport Public School number 4. I'm sure he's brilliant and should have teachers who recognize that. And I'm sure I can't give him those things on my own. Loretta's voice cracked slightly. So yes, if you can get him in, he goes. The academy interview happened 2 weeks later. Marcus had called in favors, leveraged connections, and made substantial donations to even get Isaiah considered mid-year. The headmaster, Dr. Patricia Reynolds, was a formidable woman in her 60s who'd built the academy's reputation on academic excellence and character development. She interviewed Isaiah for 90 minutes, testing his knowledge, his reasoning, his creativity. Marcus and Loretta waited outside, both nervous for different reasons. When Dr. Reynolds finally emerged with Isaiah, her expression was unreadable. She addressed Loretta directly. Ms. Morrison, your grandson is exceptionally bright. His test scores place him in the 98th percentile nationally. His scientific reasoning is sophisticated beyond his years. But he also has significant gaps. His writing needs work, his historical knowledge is spotty, and he's never had foreign language instruction. So you won't take him, Loretta said flatly. I didn't say that. I said he has gaps, which is normal for a child who's been failed by underfunded public education. What's not normal is his hunger to learn, his creative problem solving, and his emotional intelligence. Dr. Reynolds smiled. We'd be honored to have him. He starts January 2nd. Isaiah's face lit up. Loretta pressed her hand to her mouth, overcome. Marcus felt his own throat tighten with emotion. Thank you, Loretta managed. Thank you so much. Don't thank me. Thank your grandson for being extraordinary despite every obstacle in his path. Dr. Reynolds handed Isaiah a welcome packet. We'll get you caught up in your weak areas and let you soar in your strong ones. But I warn you, we expect excellence. You up for that? Yes, ma'am, Isaiah said, standing straighter. Definitely yes. In the car ride home, Isaiah was uncharacteristically quiet. When they pulled up to the estate, he finally spoke. I don't want to mess this up. You won't, Marcus said. But what if I'm not as smart as they think? What if I can't keep up? Loretta reached back from the front seat, touching his face. Baby, you've been keeping up your whole life with half the resources you needed. Imagine what you can do with all of them. Your grandmother's right, Marcus added. The academy gives you tools you've been lacking, but your intelligence, your creativity, your heart, those are all you. Nobody gave you those. Isaiah nodded, processing. Then quietly, I wish my mama could see this. She always said I was going to do big things. She'd be so proud, Loretta said, her voice thick. So incredibly proud. That night, Marcus found himself in Caroline's old office again, sitting at her desk, looking at photos of their life together. In one picture, Sophia was 3, laughing in Caroline's arms at the beach. In another, they were decorating Christmas cookies, covered in frosting and joy. I wish you could see her now, Marcus said to the photos. She's so strong, so brave. Nothing like I was after you died. Isaiah taught her that, how to heal without forgetting, how to move forward while honoring what was lost. He thought about the strange path that had led here, from a barefoot boy dancing in the garden to a household transformed, from isolation and grief to connection and hope. None of it had been planned. All of it had been necessary. His phone buzzed. A message from his sister Rachel. Heard through the grapevine, you're basically fostering a child now. Call me. We need to talk. Marcus smiled. Rachel had probably heard from one of his board members, or maybe his attorney had mentioned the employment contract for Loretta. Either way, word was spreading that Marcus Hammond had taken in a 9-year-old boy and his grandmother, and people would have opinions. He called her back. Before you say anything, Marcus started, it's not what you think. Really? Because I think you've fallen in love with a kid who needed a father figure, and you're trying to save him from everything you couldn't save Sophia from. The observation was uncomfortably accurate. Marcus sat back in Caroline's chair, considering his response. Maybe. Is that so wrong? It's not wrong. It's complicated. Marcus, what happens when Loretta heals and wants her independence back? When Isaiah's ready to return to his real life? Are you prepared for that? I don't know. But Rachel, I also don't know how to walk away. These two people, they've given me back my daughter, given me back myself. I can't just say thanks and send them on their way. I'm not saying you should. I'm saying you need to be honest about what this is. Are you helping them temporarily or building something permanent? Because Isaiah deserves to know which one it is. After they hung up, Marcus sat in the dark thinking about Rachel's question. What did he want this to be? Temporary help during a crisis or something more? Family or extended charity? The honest answer was he wanted Isaiah and Loretta to stay, wanted this household they'd built, this strange mix of privilege and struggle, wealth and wisdom. Wanted Sophia to keep having a brother figure who challenged her to be brave. Wanted to keep learning from Loretta's strength and Isaiah's resilience. But wanting wasn't enough. He needed to know what they wanted, needed to give them real choice, not gratitude disguised as obligation. He found Isaiah in his room, reading ahead in the textbooks the Academy had sent. The boy looked up when Marcus knocked. Everything okay? Can I ask you something? Honestly? Isaiah closed his book. Sure. Do you want to be here? Not because of Sophia or your grandmother's recovery, but because you actually want this to be your home? Isaiah was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was small. I'm not supposed to want it. Grandma says not to get attached. I'm not asking what you're supposed to feel. I'm asking what you actually feel. I feel like I finally got to stop running. Like I can just be a kid and learn stuff and help Sophia and not worry every single day about whether Grandma can make rent or if there's enough food or if something bad's going to happen. Isaiah's eyes were bright. I feel like I can breathe here. Is that bad? No, it's not bad at all. Marcus moved to sit beside him. Here's the truth, Isaiah. I want you and your grandmother to stay. Not temporarily, but really stay. Make this your home. But that only works if it's what you want too. So I'm asking, if you could choose, what would you choose? Isaiah looked at his hands. I'd choose this. I'd choose you and Sophia and having a place where I fit. But Mr. Hammond, people like me don't get to choose things like this. Life happens to us, you know? We just deal with it. Not anymore. You get a choice now, so take some time, think about it, talk to your grandmother, and then tell me what you really want. After Marcus left, Isaiah sat alone with the weight of choice pressing down on him. For the first time in his life, someone was asking what he wanted instead of telling him what he had to accept. The freedom of it was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. He didn't know what to do with it yet, but for the first time he believed he might actually get to decide his own future, and that changed everything. The conversation happened on a Sunday morning in mid-December, 3 weeks before Isaiah's academy start date. Loretta had asked Marcus to join her in the sunroom after breakfast, her tone suggesting this was more than casual chat. She'd been walking without the back brace for a week now, moving slowly but independently, and Marcus had watched her reclaim her autonomy with a mixture of admiration and dread. Independence meant choices. Choices meant potential departure. She sat in one of the wicker chairs, sunlight streaming through the windows, and got straight to the point. Isaiah told me about your conversation, about wanting us to stay permanently. Marcus nodded, waiting. I've been thinking about it, praying on it, talking to my sister in Florida even though we barely speak. And I need you to understand something before I give you an answer. Loretta met his eyes. I've spent 9 years raising that boy alone. 9 years of choosing between electricity and groceries, of working double shifts so he could have decent shoes, of lying awake wondering if I was enough. And I did it. I kept him fed, kept him safe, kept him good despite everything trying to make him hard. You did more than that. You raised an extraordinary person. I did. But Marcus, I'm tired. So tired I can barely see straight sometimes. And when you offered us this home, this stability, this chance for Isaiah to have everything I couldn't give him, part of me wanted to grab it with both hands and never let go. Her voice cracked slightly. But another part of me is terrified that accepting means I failed, that I couldn't do it alone, so I had to take charity from a rich white man who felt sorry for us. That's not what this is. I know, in my head I know, but my heart's still fighting it. My pride's still saying I should pack our things and go back to Bridgeport and figure it out myself like I always have. Loretta wiped her eyes. Except I don't want to anymore. I'm so damn tired of fighting alone. Marcus moved to kneel beside her chair, the same way he'd knelt beside Sophia's wheelchair months ago. Then don't. Let this be the place where you stop fighting and start living, where Isaiah gets to be brilliant instead of survival-focused, where you get to heal and breathe and have backup for once in your life. And what do you get? Really, because I still don't fully understand why you want this. I get a family again. I get to watch Sophia have a brother who makes her brave. I get to learn from your strength and Isaiah's resilience. I get to matter in ways that quarterly reports never made me matter. Marcus paused. And honestly, Loretta, I get to feel like Caroline would be proud of me, like I'm building something that honors her memory instead of just surviving it. Loretta studied him for a long moment. You really mean that? Every word. Then I have conditions, real ones, not negotiable. Name them. First, we formalize this legally. Not employment contracts, adoption papers. I want Isaiah legally yours and Sophia's brother. I want him to have every protection and opportunity your name can give him, because when I'm gone, and eventually I will be, I need to know he's secure. Marcus felt his breath catch. Adoption. You're talking about adoption. I'm talking about family. Real family, not pretend. Isaiah deserves that. Deserves to know he belongs somewhere permanent, that he's not temporary or conditional. And honestly, I think you and Sophia deserve it too. Loretta, I never expected, I know you didn't, but I'm offering it anyway. Joint custody while I'm alive, full custody to you when I'm not. Isaiah Hammond has a better ring to it than Isaiah Morrison anyway. She smiled through tears. Second condition, I keep working. Real work, not make-work charity. I manage this household. I contribute. I pay my way. My pride needs that even if my back doesn't love it. Agreed. Patricia will be thrilled to have real help. Third condition. You let me parent my grandson. I don't care how much money you have or how fancy this house is. I'm still his grandmother, and what I say goes when it comes to raising him. We're partners in this, not employee and employer. Absolutely. I wouldn't have it any other way. And fourth, Loretta's voice gentled. You stop treating this like a business arrangement you need to manage. This is family. Messy, complicated, beautiful family. You get to love my grandson without guilt. You get to need us the same way we need you. Deal? Marcus found he couldn't speak. Could only nod as tears he'd been holding back for months finally broke free. Loretta pulled him into a hug that smelled like the medicated ointment she used for her back and the lavender lotion Patricia had given her, and he let himself be held by this woman who'd survived everything and was still strong enough to offer grace. Thank you, he managed finally, for trusting me with this. With him. Thank you for seeing him, for seeing both of us as people worth investing in. Loretta pulled back, wiping her own eyes. Now we need to tell Isaiah, together. Let him know this isn't about what we decided for him, but what we're offering to him. They found Isaiah in the library with Sophia, both of them working on a science project for her homeschool curriculum. Marcus watched them for a moment before interrupting. Isaiah explaining cellular respiration with his hands, Sophia taking notes and asking questions that showed she understood, both of them completely absorbed in learning together. Isaiah, can we talk? You too, Sophia. Both children looked up, reading the gravity in Marcus's expression. Isaiah's eyes went immediately wary, defensive walls rising. Am I in trouble? No. The opposite, actually. Marcus pulled chairs close. Your grandmother and I have been talking about the future, about what we all want this family to look like. Sophia gripped her wheelchair's armrests. You're not leaving, are you? Please say you're not leaving. That depends on Isaiah, Loretta said gently. Baby, Mr. Hammond and Sophia want us to stay, permanently, and I want that too. But this has to be your choice. Isaiah looked between them, confused and hopeful and scared all at once. Stay like, live here? Forever? Stay like become family, Marcus clarified. Legal family. Adoption papers, shared custody with your grandmother, everything official and permanent. You'd be Isaiah Hammond, Sophia's brother, my son. The word hung in the air. Son. Marcus watched it land, watched Isaiah process implications and possibilities, watched the boy's careful walls start to crack. Your son, Isaiah repeated slowly. Like, actually your kid? Not just some kid you're helping? Actually my kid, with all the rights and responsibilities and love that comes with it, if that's what you want. What about Grandma? Where would she be? Right here, living with us, working with us, still your grandmother and still very much in charge of you. Loretta smiled. But when I'm gone someday, you'd have Marcus and Sophia. You'd never be alone. Isaiah's eyes filled with tears. I don't understand. Why would you want me? I'm nobody. I'm a poor kid from Bridgeport who doesn't even have nice shoes. Sophia wheeled forward, grabbing his hand. You're not nobody. You're the person who made me laugh when I forgot how. You're the person who taught me I could still be brave even in a wheelchair. You're my best friend, and I want you to be my real brother. And you're the person who reminded me what matters, Marcus added. Who showed me that dancing through locked gates to help someone isn't crazy, it's heroic? Who taught my daughter and me how to heal? Isaiah, you're not nobody. You're exactly who we need. But I can't pay you back. Can't give you anything you don't already have. You already gave us everything that matters. You gave us back our family. Now let us give you one in return. Isaiah looked at his grandmother, tears streaming down his face. Is this real? Are we really allowed to have this? Loretta pulled him into her arms. Baby, we're not just allowed. We're choosing it, all of us together. So what do you say? You want to be a Hammond? For a long moment, Isaiah just cried. 9 years of holding together, of being strong, of carrying adult worries on child's shoulders finally breaking open. Sophia cried too, still gripping his hand. Marcus felt his own vision blur, and Loretta held them all together, the strange, beautiful family they were becoming. When Isaiah could finally speak, his voice was small but certain. Yes, I want this. I want to be Isaiah Hammond and have a dad and a sister and stay here forever and never have to worry about losing you. He looked at Marcus. Can I call you Dad, or is that weird? Marcus's throat was too tight to speak. He nodded, pulled Isaiah into a hug, and felt something broken inside himself finally start to heal. This child, this extraordinary, resilient, barefoot boy who danced through gates to make a sad girl smile, was his son. Not through biology, but through choice, through love, through the kind of family you built rather than the kind you were born into. Not weird at all, he managed. I'd be honored. The adoption process took 3 months. Marcus's attorneys expedited everything they could, but the system moved at its own pace. Home studies, background checks, psychological evaluations, court appearances. Isaiah handled it all with the same resilience he brought to everything, though Marcus could see the fear underneath, that somehow, at the last minute, someone would decide he wasn't worthy of this new life. Amanda Chen from CPS did the home study, her expression carefully neutral as she toured the estate and interviewed everyone separately. When she spoke to Marcus alone, her questions were pointed. You understand this is permanent? That you're committing to raise this child regardless of how your circumstances change? I understand completely. And if Sophia's condition improves, if she doesn't need Isaiah's support anymore, you won't change your mind? Isaiah isn't here to be Sophia's emotional support animal. He's here because he's my son. That doesn't change based on anyone's medical status. Amanda made notes. And Loretta Morrison? She's comfortable with this arrangement? Ask her yourself, but yes, this was partly her idea. When Amanda interviewed Loretta, the conversation was longer, more intense. Afterward, Loretta looked drained but resolute. She wanted to make sure I wasn't being pressured, that I understood what I was giving up. Loretta sat heavily in her chair. I told her I wasn't giving up anything. I was giving Isaiah more. More family, more security, more future. What kind of grandmother would I be if I let pride keep him from that? The court date was set for March 15th. As it approached, Isaiah grew increasingly anxious. He had nightmares about the judge saying no, about being sent back to Bridgeport, about this whole beautiful dream evaporating. Marcus spent those nights sitting beside Isaiah's bed, sometimes talking, sometimes just being present, until the boy fell back asleep. Meanwhile, preparations continued for Isaiah's academy enrollment. He'd started in January as planned, and the adjustment had been rocky. The other students came from wealthy families, had traveled internationally, spoke multiple languages. Isaiah felt behind despite his intelligence, aware of every gap in his knowledge and experience. They talk about skiing in Switzerland, and I've never even seen snow that wasn't dirty street slush, he told Marcus one evening, frustrated. They talk about summer homes in the Hamptons, and I shared a one-bedroom apartment with my grandma for 5 years. How am I supposed to fit in with these kids? By being yourself. By being brilliant and curious and refusing to let anyone make you feel small. Marcus sat beside him. Isaiah, those kids have advantages you didn't have, but you have something they don't. Perspective, resilience, understanding of what really matters. That's worth more than ski vacations. Try telling them that. I will if I need to, but I think you'll find your own way to belong. You always do. Slowly, Isaiah did. He joined the science club and stunned everyone with his knowledge of ecosystems. He started a tutoring program to help younger students with math, discovering he loved teaching. He made friends with other scholarship students, kids who understood what it meant to work for everything you had. And gradually, the imposter syndrome faded, replaced by confidence earned through effort. Sophia, meanwhile, had made her own decision. After months of physical therapy and consultation with her doctors, she'd decided to try returning to school. Not full-time initially, just 2 days a week, but it was progress Marcus had thought impossible 9 months ago. Her first day back, Isaiah insisted on going with her. Moral support, he declared. Plus, I want to make sure nobody's weird about the wheelchair. Marcus drove them both, watching in the rearview mirror as Isaiah kept up a steady stream of chatter to distract Sophia from her nervousness. When they arrived, Isaiah wheeled her to the entrance with the confidence of someone who'd never doubted her right to be there. You got this, he told her. And if anyone has a problem, you tell them your brother will dance at them until they get over it. Sophia laughed, some tension easing. That's a weird threat. It's an effective threat. Nobody can withstand the power of my dancing. Marcus watched them enter together, his daughter in her wheelchair, his soon-to-be son walking beside her, and felt overwhelming gratitude for the path that had led here. From grief and silence to laughter and family, from isolation to connection, from brokenness to healing. The transformation wasn't just Sophia's, it was all of them. The adoption hearing was surprisingly informal. Judge Catherine Morrison, no relation to Loretta, though they'd joked about the coincidence, sat in her chambers rather than a courtroom, making the whole proceeding feel more like a conversation than a legal process. She asked Isaiah about school, about his life at the estate, about whether he understood what adoption meant. Isaiah answered thoughtfully, his intelligence and maturity evident in every response. When the judge asked if he wanted to be adopted, his answer was simple and clear. Yes, Your Honor. I want to be Isaiah Hammond. I want Marcus to be my dad, and Sophia to be my sister forever. I want this family to be real. It sounds like it's already real, the judge observed, but let's make it official. She signed the papers. Just like that, Isaiah Morrison became Isaiah Hammond. Loretta wiped tears. Marcus gripped his new son's shoulder, overwhelmed. Sophia cheered from her wheelchair, and Isaiah looked stunned, like he couldn't quite believe it was done. "That's it?" he asked. "I'm officially adopted." "That's it," Judge Morrison confirmed. "Congratulations, Isaiah. You have a family now." "I always had a family," Isaiah said, looking at Loretta. "But now I have more family. That's even better." The celebration that evening was small but meaningful. Patricia had made Isaiah's favorite dinner, homemade pizza, which he'd confessed was something he'd rarely had growing up. The dining room was decorated with balloons and a banner that read, "Welcome home, Isaiah Hammond." Rachel had driven down from Boston, bringing gifts and tears. Even Marcus's board chairman had sent a card, his rigid disapproval apparently softened by time and results. After dinner, Isaiah stood to give a speech he'd clearly been preparing. His voice shook slightly but held steady. "I want to thank everyone for believing in me. Grandma, for raising me and being strong enough to let me have more family. Dad," he paused, testing the word, grinning when it felt right. "Dad, for seeing me as someone worth investing in. Sophia, for being my best friend and my sister. Patricia, Rachel, everyone who helped make this happen. I know I'm just a kid from Bridgeport with a lot to learn. But I promise I'll work hard and make you proud and never forget where I came from or the people who got me here." "You already make us proud," Marcus said. "Every single day." That night, after the celebration ended and guests departed, Marcus found himself on the terrace where this had all begun. 9 months ago, he'd stood here watching a barefoot boy dance in his garden, not knowing that moment would change everything. Now that boy was asleep upstairs in his own room with his own name and his own permanent place in this family. Sophia joined him, wheeling herself onto the terrace with the independence she'd fought so hard to reclaim. "You're thinking about Mom," she said. Marcus nodded, wondering what she'd think of all this, whether she'd approve. "She'd love Isaiah, and she'd be proud of you for being brave enough to build a new family." Sophia looked up at the stars. "I think maybe she sent him to us. Like she knew we needed help and she couldn't be here, so she sent someone who could." "Maybe she did. I'm glad he's my brother. Real brother, not just friend brother. It makes everything feel more permanent, like we're not going to fall apart again." Marcus pulled her close. "We're not falling apart. Not ever again. We've got each other, we've got Isaiah, we've got Loretta. We're stronger together than we ever were separate." "Because of dancing," Sophia said. "Because Isaiah danced through locked gates and made me laugh when I forgot how." "Because of dancing," Marcus agreed. 3 months later, the estate felt completely transformed. Loretta had taken over household management with the efficiency of someone born to organize chaos. The staff adored her, the systems ran smoother, and she'd even started teaching Patricia some of her grandmother's recipes, filling the house with smells that made it feel lived in rather than displayed. Isaiah thrived at the academy. His grades were excellent, his social integration complete, his confidence unshakable. He'd joined the debate team and discovered a gift for argumentation that made Marcus simultaneously proud and exhausted. The scholarship committee had already approached him about summer programs at MIT, opportunities Marcus would have killed for at that age. Sophia had returned to school full-time, her wheelchair no longer a barrier, but simply part of who she was. She'd even joined the school's adaptive sports program, discovering she loved wheelchair basketball with the same intensity Isaiah brought to debate. Her doctors were amazed by her progress, her mental health as transformed as her physical capabilities. And Marcus had found balance he'd never known existed. He still ran his company, still made difficult decisions, still wielded power in boardrooms. But now he also made pizza on Friday nights, helped with homework, attended every one of Sophia's games and Isaiah's debates. He'd learned that being present didn't mean being perfect, that loving imperfectly was still loving, that family was built in ordinary moments as much as extraordinary ones. The first real test came in June, when Loretta's sister in Florida had a medical emergency. Loretta needed to fly down, would be gone for at least 2 weeks. It was the first time since the adoption that the family would be separated, and Marcus could see Isaiah's old anxieties resurface. "What if something happens while you're gone?" Isaiah asked his grandmother the night before her flight. "What if you get hurt again or sick, or then your dad takes care of you until I get back," Loretta said firmly. "Baby, I'm not abandoning you. I'm visiting my sister who needs me. But I'm coming back. This is my home now, too. Promise? I promise. And even if something did happen to me, which it won't, you'd still have Marcus and Sophia. You're not alone anymore. That's the whole point of family. After she left, Marcus watched Isaiah struggle with old fears of abandonment, old patterns of waiting for the other shoe to drop. He didn't try to logic the boy out of his feelings, just stayed present, maintained routine, reminded him through actions that permanence was real. When Loretta returned 2 weeks later, healthy and full of stories about her sister's recovery, Isaiah hugged her with the kind of desperate relief that showed how deep his scars still ran. But he'd survived the separation, had trusted that family meant coming back, had learned that love didn't disappear just because someone wasn't physically present. It was progress. Healing, like everything else, happened in increments. By the time fall arrived again, 1 full year since Isaiah had first danced through the gates, the household had found its rhythm. Morning chaos of getting 2 kids to different schools, afternoon homework sessions in the library, evening dinners where everyone contributed something, weekend projects that ranged from ecosystem construction to wheelchair basketball practice to elaborate dance performances Isaiah choreographed for Sophia's birthday. On the anniversary of that first dance, Marcus threw a garden party. Nothing elaborate, just the family and a few close friends. They recreated the original moment, Isaiah dancing while Sophia watched. But this time Sophia joined in, moving her upper body and arms in rhythm, her laughter bright and free. Rachel pulled Marcus aside during the celebration. "You did it! Built something beautiful out of grief. Mom and Dad would be proud." "I had help. Lot of help." "You were open to it. That's the hard part." She watched Isaiah and Sophia perform for their small audience. "That boy saved you as much as you saved him, you know." Marcus knew, had known from the beginning, really. Isaiah had given him back his daughter, yes, but he'd also given him back himself, had reminded him that life after loss was possible, that joy could return, that family was something you built rather than something you lost. As the sun set over the garden, Marcus gathered his family close, Loretta, Isaiah, Sophia, and felt the weight of gratitude and responsibility and love settling comfortably on his shoulders. This strange, beautiful family that had started with a boy dancing through locked gates had become his whole world. And looking at them now, Sophia strong and confident in her wheelchair, Isaiah brilliant and secure in his belonging, Loretta at peace for the first time in years, Marcus understood that wealth wasn't measured in dollars or properties or quarterly reports. It was measured in laughter echoing through gardens, in children who felt safe enough to dream, in a grandmother who could finally rest, in a man who'd learned that the most valuable things in life couldn't be purchased, only received with open hands and grateful hearts. "Thank you," Marcus said quietly, addressing all of them, "for letting me be part of this, for teaching me what family really means." "Thank you for seeing us," Loretta replied, "for looking past circumstances and seeing people worth loving." Isaiah grinned. "Thank you for not calling the cops that first day when I was trespassing." "Thank you for making me laugh," Sophia added, "for helping me remember how to be brave." They stood together in the garden where it all began, this family built from grief and grace and a 9-year-old's belief that sad people deserve to smile. The mansion behind them was no longer a monument to loss, but a home filled with life. The future stretched ahead, uncertain but no longer frightening, because they'd face it together. And somewhere in the evening air, if you listened carefully, you could almost hear the sound of bare feet dancing on grass, of laughter breaking through silence, of locked gates opening to let love in. The boy who danced through those gates hadn't just changed one family. He'd proven that healing was possible, that connection could bridge any divide, that sometimes the bravest thing you could do was show up for someone else's sadness with nothing but joy and stubborn hope. Isaiah Hammond, formerly Morrison, formerly just a poor kid from Bridgeport, had become exactly what his mother predicted. Someone who did big things, not through wealth or power, but through the simple revolutionary act of caring when the world said not to, of dancing when silence seemed safer, of believing that every sad person deserved a chance to smile again. And in doing so, he'd built a family that proved love wasn't about blood or circumstances or who started with what. It was about choosing each other again and again, through complicated, messy, beautiful moments that added up to a life worth living. That was the real wealth. That was the true inheritance Marcus would leave. Not his fortune, but this family. This proof that brokenness could be transformed, that loss didn't have to be the end, that sometimes the most extraordinary magic happened when you let barefoot boys dance through your locked gates and into your carefully controlled life. Because in the end, Isaiah hadn't just helped Sophia stand again. He'd taught all of them how to rise.